What's up, Internet, and Happy New Year. Welcome to episode 121 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where three this week best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always, my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Stephen. A happy belated birthday to you as well.
Likewise, Pete. Happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, you and I aging real gracefully. I think we're only getting better with age, you and I.
Yeah, I know. The 40s are going to be the pinnacle. So
People aren't prepared for how good we're going to
No.
be doing in our 40s.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
so
Yeah.
good.
Speaking of good,
You haven't peaked.
no, but I was about to throw to you, and then you said the thing about no, I got it. Speaking of haven't peaked, we got the last year's champion. All right, Mr. Max Wright on the podcast. There he is.
And I did peak multiple times last year, so that's really good to know. There was a point where if you asked me on any day if I peaked yet, I'd be saying currently peaking last year.
Yeah, but you know what?
And then Wednesday comes, and you're one of those people that call it hump day. And you're like, oh no, Tuesday was the peak of the week.
No. I say a case of the Mondays, and then I end it there. That's it. No more.
It's been all rise for you, Max. I'm very proud of your ascent as a champion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Game recognizes game. So
Yeah,
maybe
thank you finally admitting.
You finally stepped up to the challenge in 2024. I feel like we're ready to squash the beef.
Good. It's annoying because I won the competitions at the end of 2022 as well. So I just feel like you're forgetting my previous victories.
Yeah, well, let's not pretend that the competition was exactly rousing back then, right? At least they put up a fight against you this time.
All right, fine, that's fair.
Anyway,
Steve didn't. But
no, Steve didn't. Steve's still 0 for however many L's. But hey, maybe this is your year, buddy.
Okay, all right. Let's promptly move on. We don't need to dwell on my immense losses.
We're not talking about 2023's winners or losers on whatever games we may have played that you should go listen to if you haven't already. But we are here to talk about the winners.
But 2024 is the year of Steve, and I'm going to win them all. I'm going to clear up, so don't worry. It's fine.
All right. But today,
we don't even know who's won the predictions yet. That's next week's episode. So if you're here for predictions, that's not today. That's next week.
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring that up because Max's undefeated reign is going to be so goddamn short when he comes back next week for that check-in. But we'll see how that turns out for you. But today, we're here to talk about the winners of 2023 when it comes to video games. We've got our Game of the Year discussion here. Of course, we went away for our Christmas holiday break, and we had the chance to play a couple more games. We have now each compiled. If this is your first time joining us, or if you don't remember what we did last year, we have each brought 10 of our own games of the year. We are going to go through them round robin style, right? So it'll be, Max's 10th, Steve's 10th, my 10th. And then each game will receive a point in ascending order. So the 10th game will get 1 point. The 9th game will get 2 points, all the way up to our number one game of the year pick as individuals, each of which will receive 10 points. After that, Steve will tally all the scores, and we will name our official game of the year. And I guess we can count down the whole top 10 if we want and see where everybody, netted out. But
yeah, absolutely.
This is going to be the absolute wildest year because Pete disclosed yesterday that there was a game that I thought was going to be on his list that's not on his list. Some games that I thought were going to be higher up ranked lower for me, and I know Max is going to have a mix of weird games in there.
Max is the wild card. I never know.
It's like games that we won't have played, Let's be honest, Metroid's probably on the list. We didn't even play the game.
That's the thing, Max. You can't be a tastemaker without being a wild card, right? Because if you're really a tastemaker, you're out there tasting. You got to find flavors, right? And that means you're tasting a lot of stuff. Steve and I, right? We get out of our comfort zone, but we know what we like. We know what we're coming for. We want to talk about that stuff. You're out here, you're tasting, So we'll see.
So I want to set the expectation a little bit in that there was a lot of just like off the wall like stuff where I was like, yeah, all right, I'll give that a go. Most of it didn't make it in the top 10. There's a lot of stuff that if you looked at the rest of the list, I might publish it somewhere else one day for someone to have a look at. You'd be like, oh, this is a bit off the wall. But I actually think that because the year was just so strong with so many things, you're gonna be surprised with how vanilla this list could actually end up being. But we'll see. That's just my opinion.
All right. Okay. Well, we got a lot of games to talk about. There's a chance we will talk about up to 30 games, right? So I don't think
Yeah,
that's
that is
likely.
a possibility.
There'll be a little crossover, I imagine, but we'll see. So let's get right into it, right? So and I want to make it clear, none of us know each other's lists.
Mhm.
I have footage for everybody's game, but I don't know any of the names or anything like that. So we're going to be revealing them to each other as we go. So Max, we'll start with you. What
Let's
is
start
your
off.
number 10 game of the year?
My number 10 game of 2023 is a game called Dredge, which I've spoken about a fair few times on
Nice.
the various shows that we do. Dredge was a game that wasn't until it even released that I was aware it even existed, hadn't seen it come out. It didn't seem like something that would generally be my thing, but I was, pleasantly surprised. And, I ended up, it was a point where I was sick, which has happened a lot this year, and I was just blasted through the whole game in 2 days. I think I ranted about it on this podcast a couple of times. I gather some people might have tried it from that, but yeah, really good game. Just really well made, put together. It sort of felt complete. It didn't feel too long. It never overstayed its welcome. It was equal amounts of like comforting and creepy. It was familiar, but also like it felt new and it felt fresh. And I think that it really sort of deserved to be up there in the sort of top indie games of 2023. And I think we did see a lot of that in the Game Awards that Dredge was recognised. It's got a crossover with Dave the Diver, another obvious indie game, famously indie game. But yeah, Dredge number 10.
Beautiful.
Happy days. Who's next? That's 1 point for Dredge, Steve. 1 point.
It is
1
1
point for
point for
Dredge.
Dredge. Yeah. So interestingly, my number 10 is Dave the Diver.
Ah,
Um,
complete and
yeah.
Oh, thematic consistency. We love it.
yeah.
This game I was surprised by. It kind of presents itself as just being a pretty shallow game on the surface, right? You go
Oh,
diving, you
good
pick it
pun.
up, you go and you sell it in your sushi restaurant. But there's a lot of depth to it. There's a lot of like mini games. There's a lot of side things. There's like visual novel aspects in there at certain points. There's like farming elements where you can like farm rice. There's like a really intricate story with chapters, um, quests, side quests. There's like the collection of these like collectible cards based on the fish that you capture. It's really cool. It's a really fun game. Great looking pixel art, absolutely gorgeous visuals. But I think it deserves to be at the bottom of my list. It's a great game. Um, but I kind of feel like all of those elements together, not one of them is kind of deep enough to get you to kind of
Mhm.
keep playing. It's the fact that there's a mix. It's like a buffet, right? You look at a world buffet and you get to do a little bit of everything, but none of it's particularly great
I think I've
food.
used that exact
So
analogy on this show. Um, the global
yeah,
buffet.
it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I kind of feel like that's pretty much what Dave the Diver offers, but it is a fantastic TV game. I
Mhm.
played a lot of this at my parents when I was there over the Christmas break. Just something on the TV. You can just be diving and catching fish and like grinding away.
Yeah.
I think we kind of undervalue that kind of game. Like I
Hmm.
think that sometimes we're so eager to laud games that have really deep gameplay systems that sometimes like stuff that pardon the pun, right? Like is a little bit more shallow, right? Like we kind of write it off as if that trivializes it when like there is something to a game that is, digestible and has personality and, is just something that is fun to get your hands on and isn't, always asking the most of you, you know?
We have spoke about this before where we've talked about, what are our favorite game shows where we're playing a game, what show do you want on in the background? It might be Seinfeld, or it might be Friends, something familiar. And then we then spoke about like there are great TV games where, like, if you're actually watching you're watching a TV, with your significant other, and you want to be playing a game at the same time, there are great games that don't demand your full attention, or need you to be like, "I'll pause this so I can hear this cutscene," or, you can just be, like, grinding away or doing repetitive tasks and something like that, and I do feel like if I've had Dave the Diver installed on my Steam Deck since the day it came out, I just have not got around to it, and I feel like I know I would enjoy it, so I think now that I know that Steve's played it and enjoyed it, and I trust Steve's opinion, I think I'm gonna give this one a go early into this year.
That's how I feel about both of these games. A friend of mine
Yeah.
bought me a copy of Dredge. I wanted to get to Dave the Diver, but alas, there is only so much time. And yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of good games and not a lot of time this year.
No.
So some of them are going to fall through the cracks. But one that didn't fall through the cracks for me, number 10, is Mortal Kombat 1.
Hmm.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
We're definitely
yeah,
going to talk about 30 games today, aren't we?
yeah, it might have.
Yeah, it feels like it.
So, this is one that kind of caught me by surprise. Like, especially when it came out, it was a really good palate cleanser for me. It was during the fall, right? And it was that during that like kind of onslaught of games that we had, and there were a lot of really big, meaty games that I played back to back. And I came back from a vacation and was like wanted to get into something and kind of, just blow through it, right? And like there's just something about a Mortal Kombat campaign for me. And like this series is surprisingly near to my heart considering that I'm not historically a fighting game guy. But I really appreciate NetherRealm's commitment to what Mortal Kombat is, right? Like it's extremely weird, it's deeply unserious. It is, at times very nonsensical and like it has that kind of mashup of the, hyper violence of like the 80s action movies mixed with like that kind of Saturday morning cartoon wackiness.
Hmm.
And, you have this like insane sprawling multiversal lore to what is essentially a game that is about action figures slamming together. And I I appreciate how unapologetically itself it is, and that like it is clearly a game series franchise from another time, and it has meaningfully reinvented itself mechanically and narratively even um, without straying from what that core identity kind of always has been. And I think like it definitely with this being kind of the latest reboot of it again after another successful trilogy, um, I think it definitely doesn't have as much of that like shiny new factor that Mortal Kombat 9 did, a couple years ago. But yeah, nobody does what NetherRealm does, and, like, for that, I keep showing up for their games even though, like, I don't really have a crew of friends, who are getting together to play fighting games like that anymore. But yeah, they've managed to maintain a unique identity that, I think makes it appealing to, the folks that do wanna get sweaty and get out there and ladder, or the people that just want to, you know, um click sticks for a weekend or 2 and play through the story and, do that again in another couple of years.
Yeah. Or just play with your buddies, which I know I've got a mate of mine who only ever buys Mortal Kombat to play with his brother for like a weekend, and then that's it. They're like that.
Yep.
They'll do it and have fun with it.
Yeah, so, it edged out a couple other excellent games to make this list. Yeah, it
That's
was
the
one I
challenge
really enjoyed.
this year. That's been the challenge for all of us, I think, is like, oh, it's a shame that this isn't gonna be on the list, but oh
Yeah.
well.
You know, yeah, I've got like 4 or 5 honorable mentions that I will quickly skim through at the end, but I
Yeah.
was like very upset that some of them didn't make the list, and I'm like, maybe if I'd have put more time into these, they would have
Yeah.
made their way onto the list. But then I'm like,
Yeah.
which one's gonna not be on the list? And it's a real challenge to kind of
What do
knock
you do?
games off. Yeah.
Alright, so
Are
Max,
we
number
on
9.
number 9? I think my number 9 is so strong that it speaks volumes about the year that we've had. My number 9 game of 2023 is Resident Evil 4, the remake, obviously.
Wow,
Um,
okay.
it's my first time playing through Resident Evil 4. I only got into Resident Evil with the Resident Evil 2 remake, um, back in whenever that came out. Loved Village last year or the year before whenever I got around to playing that. So, yeah, this I went in with, you know, an idea of it being good, and it was very, very good. It was longer than the Resident Evil games I played before. It had, like, the element of where the previous games have been like you play through it multiple times for reasons, Resident Evil 2, you play through it, to the 2 paths, 4 paths. Resident Evil, 3 is quite short, so you can play through it multiple times and just sort of get faster. Whereas this very much felt like it's substantial enough that you play through it once and then you'll sort of finish with it. And then there was a DLC on top of it that I also enjoyed as well. But yeah, this was a very feels like a very if you'd have told me this was from 2002, um, I wouldn't have believed you. Obviously, there's going to be things that they would have taken out. Maybe some of the more goofy stuff. I know there's some quick time events and stuff they've removed. But yeah, I thought Resident Evil 4 was a very strong entry in the franchise. I'm very much looking forward to Resident Evil 5 if they ever remake that. Because I
Come
would
on,
like
they
to
gotta
keep
go back to they gotta go back. We're gonna do Code
Code
Veronica
Veronica.
next.
I know, I know, I
Come on.
know. Which I think they are.
Let's
I think we
finish
know.
that story.
I think we know that they are, but I just would like to. I would like to keep experiencing this franchise, but I would like to keep experiencing it in the way that a modern Capcom is doing it, as opposed to Capcom before of the
Sure.
previous. Where I didn't never really gelled with many of their games until Resident Evil 7 came out, and then since then for me it's just been hit after hit after hit,
Yeah.
And I want to sort of see this current Capcom in its current state deliver to me a Resident Evil 5 and beyond.
I
So
would
yeah,
Where's
love
this
for them to deliver me a good Mega Man game. That's I feel like that's
yeah,
one of the few franchises that they have not been able to revitalize as well
Dino
as they
Crisis
should.
is, like, nowhere to be seen
yeah.
either, which
Yeah,
is
Maybe that just
insane
can't
to
be
me.
done. Maybe that just can't be done.
disagree. But
Uh,
anyway, that's a conversation for another episode.
yeah, yeah.
So Resident Evil 4 remake. Nice.
Yes, 2 points.
All right, Steve, number 9.
My number 9 is Baldur's Gate 3,
Oh, wow.
and I feel like this probably would rank higher if I had had time to play more of it, because it's such a clever game. I think every single time you play through it, it's gonna be unique, you're gonna see something different. You're never gonna be able to play it the same way multiple times, no matter how you go in there. The dice rolls really change the gameplay and change even like who joins your party, for example. Like you might not have been able to save someone, or you may not have even stumbled across them because you didn't do a dice roll that couldn't get you into that place. So you didn't meet them at that exact moment. So you never meet them in the game. There's like all of these factors in Baldur's Gate 3 combined with a phenomenal story that's really compelling that I think means it deserves Game of the Year from a lot of these places that we've seen. It
Sure.
deserved it in the Game Awards. It's got it from the Steam Awards this week and a bunch of other places. It does something unique and something special, and I don't think we're going to get a game like this for a good number of years. I think this is going to be one of those games that I chip away at throughout this year. I'm really hoping 2024 is a slower, quieter, calmer
Dear
year.
God, I hope
So
so.
I
Mhm.
can just chip away at some of these games from last year, like Baldur's Gate 3, that really deserves people's attention.
Yeah, I'll get out in front of this one now because this one I didn't rank for that reason because I similarly just didn't play enough of it and like what I played I was really into and I think this has a chance of being like a Persona 5 like Undertale situation for me where like it's a game I play a year later, a couple years later or whatever, and then I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this wasn't, my game of the year or in that
Yeah,
conversation." But I had to come to the conclusion that I just wasn't gonna get to play it the way I wanted to if I wanted to play any other games that came out this fall.
yeah.
So I tabled that one, but I share your sentiments for sure. Like I played almost all of the opening chapter, right? Like I got like right to the end of it. And
Yeah, I got to the point where it's like, if you proceed, you won't be able to wrap up any of the
yeah,
stuff in Act 1. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna carry on wrapping stuff up, and then I'll decide to, like, go over the
exactly.
mountain to Act 2.
Yeah, and I think I'm at the point where I just kinda wanna re-roll my character and, like, start over and, try to get back into it because I tried to pick it up again, over the
It's
last couple of weeks.
difficult when you leave it for a while,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm like, I feel out of it in a way that is not, I think, conducive to me playing it the way I want to. So,
Mhm.
one I'm excited to give a lot more time to in 2024 because I really do think it has potential to be my favorite game of all time.
Yeah, I've played about 2 or 3 hours of it, and, as someone who does play D&D and sort of seeing those familiar things and knowing the general basics of it, the biggest hurdle for me was sort of just, like, relearning the controls or just learning the controls full stop. As someone that's very used to pressing a button and a thing happens immediately, not,
Yeah.
for menus. This I
I
can
think if you haven't played, like, another Larian game, like I
Yeah.
played Divinity Original Sin and Original Sin 2, so they felt pretty familiar with me, and I played both of
Mhm.
those on console, so having the controller controls on the Steam Deck, it made a lot of sense, but it's very menu heavy. Like, that is
Yeah.
probably one of the things I dislike about the game, it's just the number of systems and menus and things, but I just don't know how you could do it
There's
Yeah.
better,
no
so
way, right? For it to give you that much choice, it needs to be
Mhm.
menu heavy, but, like,
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think that was part of it for me too, is, like, I wanted to play it on the big screen on PlayStation 5, and it came out late there, and now I'm kinda, like, do I just play it on my desktop because it'll be a better experience? I don't know, but I'm definitely excited to spend some more time with it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, my number 9 is Super Mario RPG.
Wow,
This,
okay.
usually I try to avoid um putting remake
Remakes, like just
on.
pure remakes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I usually try to do that on my top 10s, right? Because I wanna celebrate, the modern classics that are getting released and not, give roses to games that we already know are excellent, right? But I think, I thought a lot about it, and when I was comparing it to the other games, that almost made this list and didn't, I think it would be disingenuous for me to not include this one for how much I enjoyed it and how much I think I'll look back on it as one of the games that stood out to me this year. So especially when I consider the fact that there was a point earlier this year where I thought it might be higher, like a lot higher on my list. And we'll talk about that later. But, I think. Right. I talked a lot about it when we did our kind of review in progress. The game's a classic for a reason. I think it's a really, really excellent example of the extremely high bar that Square was hitting at that time, right? And how they were, kind of the masters of RPGs back on the Super Nintendo. And I think it, especially if you're a big Mario fan, like if you're the type of person who was like getting excited about seeing like the different jumps in the Mario movie or something like that, right? It is a super unique take on the Mushroom Kingdom, and there's a lot about it that is only in this, iteration or this universe, whatever, and it feels so at home that it's strange how good it is. Like, it has that kind of Link's Awakening, like, weirdness quality that I really appreciate, right? That it's the kinda game that just wouldn't get made now, right? That, like, the control over IP like Mario is a little bit more um companies are more cautious, right? And they exert more control over stuff like that usually. Um so I think there's a lot there between how well the gameplay holds up, the music, which is Yoko Shimomura, who is the composer of the Kingdom Hearts series, right? One of my all-time favorite composers. She considers this one of her best works as a composer, and the script genuinely funny, right? Like it's got a lot of that, like goofy 90s JRPG personality to it. And I also don't want to undersell what an achievement I think this uh remake is, right? Art Piazza is the name of the studio that worked on it. They're best known for working on like the Dragon Quest series. And I think they really struck a good balance here of smoothing out the rough edges for modern players so that you could come in and have this feel like it's a new game without like compromising on the tone of the original and like the things about it that are different that would be changed if it was, a less faithful remake to this day, right? And I think it sets a really good bar for how you can bring a game like this back, and it's something I would love to see them do for something like, Earthbound or Final Fantasy VI
Mhm. And
or
it's Earthbound's 40th, 30th, 40th, 30th birthday this year,
30th,
so it would make
possibly.
sense that
Yeah.
yeah, it's gotta be 30, I'm not that old.
Um,
So it's got
yeah.
it kind of would make sense that we would see
Or
something like that this year.
or like a game like Chrono Trigger, which has like been like ported, or like poorly ported in most cases.
Badly ported, yeah.
Excluding the DS one, which is great, but has never gotten the remake treatment, has never gotten the, like, refreshed for a modern audience, and it's like, this is the way to do it, and I would
You
love
think
to
you'd wanna
see
see that?
other.
Not like a Final Fantasy VII remake go at Chrono Trigger?
I think your mileage may vary, right? Like, I think there are certain games that. Like, I think Chrono Trigger visually has aged better than the original Super Mario RPG. So, like, I think going for this style here, like, made more sense, right? Um, so, like, I could kinda see it both ways. I could see wanting to go for that look to, like, maintain the timeless look of the original, right? But, like, freshen it up. But I think if you wanna kinda present it as like this, as like, "Hey, we're making this new again for a new generation. This'll be their Chrono Trigger."
Mhm.
I think there's something to that, you know?
I could see them doing it in that like HD 2D style that they use for Octopath and keep the
Yeah.
pixel art that's there, but freshen it up with really good
That'd be
lighting,
cool.
modernize the controls, that kind of thing.
I'd genuinely be down for either. But I think something like Earthbound, I think could really benefit from this because I think it could use some modernization, right? Like
Mhm.
especially considering it's like an NES title, the
Fun.
original.
I think the good thing about, Earthbound is that the style exists. You know, there's already like the claymation like looking
Right.
models that go along with it. So yeah, that would be a really good look for that game.
But yeah, I love this game a lot. I like I said, I there was a time where this ranked a lot higher on this list, and some things knocked it down, and it is what it is. But I think it in a year full of very good RPGs and very good turn-based games, this extremely old game managed to, I think, like stand up and still uh show that it is like the classic it is thought of and deserves to be thought of in that way, and it isn't just like a rose tinted nostalgia type thing.
Mhm.
Because I didn't have any nostalgia for it and I really connected with it.
Excellent stuff. So what we at now? We at 8 now?
8.
8, yeah, 8.
Okay, shall I go?
You
Yeah.
shall.
All right, my number 8 game of 2023. This might cause a stir amongst my previous comments on this type of game specifically. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is my number 8
Wow, okay.
game of
Wow, look at this
2023.
guy.
Considering how anti 2D Mario I've been my entire life, really, I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed Wonder. What this doesn't do is make me any interested in any of the previous Mario games. My opinion of those games still stands.
And it's
This
Okay.
still
one,
wrong. Good. Nice. Let's
thank
move on.
you,
Steve,
yeah,
number
but
8.
Mario Bros. Wonder for me was very it was exactly what I'd sort of needed. It was whimsical, it was inventive, it was sort of like Odyssey where it never held on to a good idea for too long, where you're like, "Oh, that's novel," and then you're like, this again." It was like, "Oh, yeah," every time something happened or if it did repeat
Yeah.
something, there was a twist to it and something new that really, that
See,
made it
I agree with
interesting
you, but I
again.
remember kind of I think it was you, Pete, or maybe it might have been Chewy who was like, um, it felt like those things came and went. They were like fads, and they never built upon these like ideas enough. They did it in a level, and then that was it, and we never saw it again.
I liked that. I liked that element because what I didn't want to do is go, okay, it's going to be one of these 4 things. There's only a finite number of levels. I didn't want to be like, okay, am I going to be big again? But like, if it was, oh, this time I'm floating again. There was a twist to it that made it interesting again.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just thought it was a joy to play the whole way through. And I think it was such a stark polar opposite to Spider-Man 2 for me, which came out at the same time, which where I was just like, oh, like nothing in this is doing it for me. There's I didn't feel like the innovation or the fun ideas coming into play and sticking around. You know, I felt like everything I was doing. Okay, cool. I've got to do 10 of these. Blah blah blah. Whereas this game is just like bang 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 bang, done and over. Fantastic. There we go. So yeah, that's my number 8 is Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Very nice. Steve, number 8.
So yeah, I worry that I'm going to be killed, but my number 8 is Tears of the Kingdom.
You're
Wow,
crazy. Steve
interesting.
chose Steve chooses violence every year on this show.
That's really
Number 10,
interesting.
Wordle last year. It didn't even
Hey,
come out
Wordle
that
was
year.
great. We almost
Didn't even
got
come
another
out.
New York Times game on my list this year. So,
Connections?
we were like, Connections is
Steve,
fucking
you play
great.
Connections? I play Connections.
Yeah, there you
Hang on
go.
a
See,
minute.
and how good is it, Pete? It's so
Great.
good. I play
Not on
that
my
with my
fucking
mum
list
all
of
the
game of the
time.
year, but it's great.
Why has no one told me about Connections before?
Yo,
You
get on
guys
Oh,
should
have you
get
ever
know.
on that
watched the
Connections.
you ever watched the
We'll start
TV
sharing our
show?
results in our chat every day, guys. Okay.
I'll do it. Yeah.
I want to see how
Have you
good
ever
you're
played the
doing.
TV show Only Connect, Max? Yeah, watch that
No. Don't watch TV.
with.
We don't need to talk about
Yeah, okay.
Connections. Talk
Well,
about the
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
number
that.
8
yeah,
game
Yeah,
on
yeah.
your
I'll
list.
show. Anyway, yeah, Tears of the Kingdom. Again, this might have been one of those games. If I played it more, may have ranked higher. But I feel like I got a good feel of it. I did a couple of temples. I kind of got what the game was offering and what it was about. And it's a fantastic game. It deserves to be on the list. I just enjoyed all of the games that are above it more. And it's not, I'm looking at this list as what's my enjoyment more than objectively this game is probably ranking higher because there are some games that are above this that are objectively worse games, but I enjoyed them more, and it's my list, and I don't care because I'm
Crazy.
You've
ranking
got
some
Pete
of them
one
higher.
side of you shaking his head. You've got me the other side of you nodding my head, going, "Go piss, girl. Do your shit. Be your truth. Be your own truth, Steve.
Live your
Don't
truth,
let
Steve.
anyone else
Yeah.
tell you that a higher number means that you should place it at a higher number. Fair play."
But I'm sure Tears of the Kingdom is on your list, so I'll let you go with your number 8 peak, 'cause I'm sure we'll talk about Tears of the Kingdom in a little bit
Yeah, I
anyway.
think we'll talk about it again later. Number
Yeah.
8 on my list. This is one that I think probably would have ranked higher if I didn't get as sucked into another game that ranked higher on this list. My number 8 is Pizza
Mm.
Tower.
Oh,
So
okay.
I really
Interesting.
enjoyed this
Interesting.
game. My time with it so far. I think it's super charming. I think it. I've not played the Wario Land games, right? Which is kind of the game that
Big
it
inspiration.
right. Yeah,
Massive inspiration,
it's
yeah.
kind of like, a spiritual successor to that series, right? It's Harvest Moon to Stardew Valley, right? And, so coming in fresh off of that, right? No real expectations, no real understanding of what I should be expecting out of a game like that. Um, I thought this was one of the most fresh indie platformers I've played in a really long time. I think, you know, we had a real renaissance of 2D platformers over the last like decade, and I think it was a little front loaded, right? Where I think there's a lot of games that I point to as being incredibly standout, innovative games in the genre. Um, and then a lot of sequels to those games, and then a lot of games that kind of, you know, learned from those games, but didn't necessarily up the ante as much. This to me is like on that level of something like a Super Meat Boy or a Shovel Knight or a Celeste, or like this is a standout great game, right? It's got really good gameplay. I love it like almost it's like Sonic in a weird way, like how about momentum it is and how, you're really encouraged to explore the nooks and crannies of a level and the different ways that rooms connect and how you can get around places. And then you have that like mad dash race back through the level in reverse at the end of every, stage. And the fact that, if you fail that time trial, right, you have to redo the whole level adds this really, really. Oh, you're muted, Steve. Steve, you're muted. You're
But the
muted.
pizza guy will try and come and eat you first. He
Right.
will, like, if you fail the time, he will come out and he's reminds me of the moon in Wario Land 4 that would used to come and follow you on some of the levels,
Okay, there
and
you
he'd
go.
try and steal the key off of you.
So, like, and what I love
Yeah.
about that is, it creates a real sense of tension, right? Like the risk reward there is great because um
Yeah, because some of
failing
the
and
secrets you can't find on the way. They're only on
yeah,
the way back.
yeah, you can only do it that way, right? Or like, and you have to be constantly making good use of your time or like getting like the other little like clocks along the way and stuff like that. And the fact that, you want to chase that high score and avoid not having to be forced to run the level again, right? Like it makes getting through it and getting a good run, especially the first time you've played a level, immensely satisfying. Like more satisfying than I think it would be otherwise. And then a lot of other platformers can offer, right? And the boss fights I think are another like very well realized and like dynamic element of the game that really
Oh,
stands out.
those are the one thing I really do not like about the game. That's the one of the reasons it's not on my list. I absolutely hate
Really?
how every single boss, like you do the boss, and then it's dead, and you got to do it the exact same way again. It's not like there's a second form like there would be in like a Metroid boss, or
Yeah,
there would be
that's
in
fair, I
like
guess.
a Souls boss. It's the exact same boss again. It's just tedious that I've got to do it again with maybe a little bit more difficulty because they're dropping things or it's just a silhouette now. And that's
I
a
see, I like
frustration
that because
along.
I feel like it provides like a nice steady, um, challenge there, right? Like it's not like learning 2
Mm,
separate phases. It's like I've gotten this down and then it iterates again. To me, it feels kind of cohesive with the you go through the level and then you go back through the level, right? Where it's like you're building on the idea and that like you learned a pattern. Now we're going to throw this wrench in the gear and see if you can react to that, which is And your mileage may vary, but I found that to be really rewarding. I'm surprised that it didn't like crack your list at all.
It was on there. This was the game that I was like, "Oh shit, what do I swap Tears of the
This is a
Kingdom with?" And
bubble.
I was like, but then I thought pizza. Yeah, it was like it shifted off the end. It was like, oh, it was there, but then I forgot. I forgot some games, and I
Forgot
was like, yeah, they should probably
Showing you
go on
didn't
there.
play enough of that game, you monster. But the last thing I do just want to say about the game is I really want to applaud its art style and its soundtrack. I think it like oozes personality and style, like the character animations, the little face that reacts whenever you're doing things, like the kind of picture in picture thing you got going on. So cool, so innovative. And the soundtrack
Yeah,
was my second favorite soundtrack this year, I'll say.
This is
I
one of
really
the
love the
games.
soundtrack, and I love that the guy tells me that the combos are cheesy all the time. And sometimes they're lame, but most of the time they're cheesy combos, and I'm happy with that.
This is one of the games that I've been meaning to get round to as well. It's just I'm looking at it on the list of like games to buy and play, and it's on there. It's frustrating, but there's been so much to do this year, so I'm glad that it's getting recognised somewhere in this list at
Not
least.
very long. So one that you could easily knock out in the early part of this year when you got some free time. Like I am
Perfect.
very close to the end, and I
Unless
think
you're
I
a
only put
completionist.
3 hours or something.
Oh, you know me.
Yeah.
I am. But luckily for me, well, sorry, unluckily for me, I've also got Baldur's Gate 3 on that list of things I want to play at the start of this year, and I already know there are games coming out that I want to play. So
You've
we'll
got annual leave
see.
to use up before
I do
it
actually have
renews.
5. I do actually have 5 days. Good
They
point.
gotta pause video games, I think, in 2024. Like
Give
let's
us a
just
break.
take it easy.
Yeah, give us a break. Give us a little time off. Is it me?
It's you.
My number
Yeah,
7 game of
number
the year
7.
is a game that I initially had a lot higher on the list, and then when I was just trying to, like, rejig everything around and work out where things go, it ended up getting pushed down, but that doesn't mean it's not still great, and that's Cocoon. Cocoon
Ooh,
was probably my favorite indie of the year.
wow.
It's so clever, and it's like how much that game can tell its audience, tell the player, and explain to the player and teach the player without a single line of text, without a single word spoken. It's all just context and trial and error. Um, and I thought that at the start I was like, "Oh, I get this. This is quite cool." And then when it starts combining elements, and when it starts going inside other elements, and you're sort of there's multiple layers to be thinking about at any one time. I thought it was so just if a game can make me feel clever by completing the puzzles that they've sort of done, that's obviously them being clever to have done that. I think that's a good game. If it makes me go, "Oh, I've done that puzzle, I'm a genius," when actually all I've done is followed sort of the instructions they've laid out for me. I think that's a really well done game, and I think the visuals were great. I think the world was sort of weird and creepy, and yeah, I just thought it was excellent and far and away better than Inside and Limbo, which are the games that were previously made by those people. What?
No, it's
Pete
just
hates this game.
I hate this game, and I
Really?
feel the polar opposite to what you just said of that, like,
Damn.
I felt like this was, a major step back from those games.
Really?
Yeah, I
Oh, I
did,
thought this
but
was great.
hey,
I thought this was
different
so
strokes.
the thing with Limbo and Inside is Limbo and Inside are very much I have a similar problem with them that I have with things like, Little Nightmares, where it's very trial and error. It's like, do
Mm,
this thing in this one way, and if you don't do it, you have to just do it again, restart, restart, restart. Whereas the only
yeah,
time that Cocoon did this was during boss fights. Whereas every other element of it was like, "You can do it, buddy. Just keep trying. You'll work it out. You just experiment until you get it." And I much prefer that okay, cool. So at some point, this thing's come down and got me. So I need to work out, well, how do I stop? It's a
yeah.
different kind of game as well.
Yeah, it's just
Um,
I think a very different, like, kind of puzzle solving, like, those are
yeah.
the kinds of, like, puzzles that I respond to, which is why I think, like, I like games like Super Meat Boy, right? Where it's, like, it's
Mhm.
about the puzzle is, like, going as you're going and, like, figuring it out on the fly, which is, like, I think works for my brain better. Whereas, like, with Cocoon, I hit a point where I was, like I think it was, like, the second or so hour that I was playing it, maybe whatever, um and the entire time I was like, "I don't really think I like this," but it was just like, but I figured out the puzzle, so I'll just keep going. I'll just keep going."
Yeah.
And then, like,
I
I got through a boss fight, and I was just like yeah, I don't know about this. Like, I just don't think this is for me.
Kat was watching me play the whole time, and then I just kept being like, "Oh, that's genius. Oh, yeah." And I'd be like, "Okay, so I'm in here." I'm like, "Kat, remember this. I'm in here. I need to go in here. I need to take this into here. I need blue out here. I need pink or red here or whatever, blah, blah." And, yeah, I thought it was fantastic, and I think it's one that I think should be experienced. If you have Game Pass or access to Game Pass in some way and you haven't played this game, I'd say just give it a go on Game Pass because you can sort of play it for that, part of your subscription.
Yeah, yeah, you should
But
definitely.
I loved this game. And the fact that I loved this game this much and it's at number 7, that says a lot about the rest of the games this year. I keep saying it.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, that is my number 7. It
Mhm.
is Cocoon.
beautiful. That's great, man. Awesome. Yeah. So far, no crossover on any of our lists,
Yeah,
which has been pretty good.
No,
yeah,
no,
not a single. I'm
yeah.
sure it will happen eventually.
Sure,
I
but it speaks to the breadth of experiences that were on,
yeah,
on offer this year, man.
yeah.
Crazy. All right, Steve,
Mhm.
get
I
us to the
it's not
number
it's not
number
happening with this one.
7, whatever.
Chance of Sonar is my
Chanson.
number 7. I don't know if either of you have played this one.
I have
Nope.
not.
Again, it's like what I said about Cocoon, about like the explaining a lot to you without using any like words and things like that. I think
Very
that.
much. There are no words in this game. That's the
Mhm,
point of the game. You are translating glyphs, and you have to figure out what the glyphs are through solving puzzles, through looking at things in the world, and
So
using
pretty.
deduction. Reminds me of Case of the Golden Idol. It
mhm.
reminds me of that ship game that I forget. Um,
Curse of the Obra Dinn.
where Yep, Oberdin, yep, where you essentially are presented with a puzzle and you have to figure out what these glyphs mean, whether it's open, closed, door, up, God, what those glyphs mean. You're trying to translate all of the glyphs. I think there are like 300 in the game, something like that. Maybe it's like 150. There's a lot of glyphs to translate, and there's a really great story that goes along with it. Gorgeous art style, absolutely stunning. And it's just been a real kind of treat to play. I've just been kind of chipping away at it every single night. But the first night I played it for like 3 hours straight, and I just could not put it down. I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting this. I'm in the swing. I'm like figuring all that. I only had two glyphs I couldn't translate on the devotees language. Then I've got to move on to the warriors language, and then there's like the bards language, and like it keeps going and going and going, and every single kind of echelon in society has their own language that they speak that you've got to translate through these glyphs.
Yeah, seems really great. It seems another one that I'm like, yeah, I would like to get around to that at some point and just didn't get a chance to. Which we're gonna get a lot of, I think.
Yeah, this is one that, like, I
Yeah,
don't even really remember people talking about much. Like, I feel like I remember seeing it at an event, but, like, flew under my radar.
Yeah, I think it sort of came out of nowhere. Like when people were talking about it and it got me interested in it, I was like, oh, like how did I not know this was happening?
yeah, it definitely came and went, which I think is a shame. But I felt like that about Case of the Golden Idol last year as
Mhm.
well. I felt like no one was really playing it, and it had this like really weird but rememberable art style, but really cool gameplay that went along with it. And that was a deduction game as well in the same way. And you can like brute force some of the glyphs if you don't know them, right? If you know what door is and you know what open is, you can deduce that that one probably means close, and that's kind
Mhm.
of the point of it. It's like you've got to use your brain to kind of put all these pieces together and figure out the story.
Is it like playing the movie Arrival, where you
Yeah,
just have you
yeah,
just have
we're
no
learning the
way
one
in
true
your
language. Yeah.
cool. I like this. I'll play this.
All right, there you go. Ringing endorsement. All right,
Hmm.
my number 7, is one I'm very interested to see if it made it on anybody else's list. My number 7 is Starfield. So, I think it's fair to say that, like, Starfield didn't necessarily meet expectations, it wasn't, the second coming that I think Bethesda and Xbox maybe wanted and maybe even needed it to be,
First 11
right?
out of 10 video game, you mean?
Right? Um But, I still really enjoyed my time with it, and I remember Steve and I talking a lot about how we seem to fall on the higher side of the conversation around it, and, I'll definitely admit that, there are things about it that are maybe points of friction for people that I can understand, right? Like there are things about it that feel old fashioned, right? Like some of the characters, still feel kind of wooden. I think there's definitely uh missed opportunities, right? To have certain story beats feel deeper or hit harder, or to hit the bar of companion that we saw in Baldur's Gate 3 and stuff like that, right? Like there's definitely things you can point to that I think it doesn't need, the bar that it was shooting for. But I think when you get into the weeds of this game and you allow yourself to get lost in it, and like between the way that you build your character and kind of all the little different like side faction missions that you can go through that feel like you're playing through like a movie that's like its own mini campaign in its own right, and all of the different kind of like water cooler moments that Bethesda does so well, where you'll be out in space and you'll come across a random ship, or you run into a random, enemy on a planet and you steal their ship and fly off with it. Like those moments still work so well. And I think that the game does offer a really strong framework for role playing. And, I think that while, I can point to all these things that maybe don't land and or don't land as well as they could, or maybe don't live up to some of the other major players in the game now, I do think it has an X factor that just it works, at least for me and for the people it works for, right? And, I this is a game where I, like, can definitely see somebody saying it's closer to a 7 or an 8, but, like, I like it's like a 9, right? And I think that's what's important, and I maybe
Mhm.
that is because I'm a gamer of a certain age and I have nostalgia for, a certain type of old school RPG, and maybe that doesn't vibe with younger players anymore, and maybe that's part of the discrepancy as well. I don't know. It could be a lot of things, but
I think the game has its flaws, and I think it's okay to enjoy the game. That's why Tears of the Kingdom is so low on my list, because other games I enjoyed more, and that's the reason why I'm ranking it in that way. I think you can objectively look at it and say maybe Tears of the Kingdom is probably a better game than Starfield if I'm ranking them and reviewing them and rating them. But if you enjoyed one more than the other, then who
Hmm.
cares?
Yeah,
right.
that's what it's all about. This is
Yeah, I guess it's
a subjective list.
I guess it's one of those things where what is special about it is hard to nail down. And I think I can understand why people don't find the fun in it, but I think if you allow yourself to kind of jump in and go with the flow and just like decide what you're doing and then follow that thread to its natural conclusion, there's something about it that, you know, it definitely struck a chord with with
Did you reach the conclusion? Did you finish? Did you get to the end in the end?
Steve.
Okay.
So remember we talked about I was gonna make a save where I ran through the end and then I
Yeah.
was gonna pick it back up. I picked it back up and I just started doing more side shit because I was in the middle of I was like, oh, but I want to keep doing this thing I was doing. So, I I really like the game. I'm excited to spend more time with it in 2024 and like get into some of the new game plus and all that stuff that I haven't seen yet. But it's like it's one of those games where like I put like 80 hours into it and I want to put 80 more. So that's pretty good.
Mhm.
What's very funny is I have a friend that has completed New Game Plus 10, and this is the first positive review I'm hearing of this game from someone that I know that's played it. So
New game plus 10, like they've played it 10
You didn't
times.
like it?
yeah, he said
Yeah,
it was
there's you have to complete the end of the game, I think it's 10 or 15 times to
it's 10
get a
times
certain thing.
to
Okay,
get
okay.
to whatever it
And
was,
he
but it
says he didn't like it.
he didn't say he didn't like it, but he was just like, "Yeah, it was alright." At no point was he like, "Oh, it's good for this reason. He likes this. He thinks this really works together." This is the guy that's played, like, Skyrim every single year since it's
All
come
right.
out, Fallout every single year since it's
Like
come
real
out,
quick,
you know?
I don't wanna like take shots at your boy. That's not what I'm here to do. But like I want to like I have an essay like brewing in the back of my head about how like there is a sickness within us within the gaming community where it's like there's these motherfuckers that are out here buying these games and playing them and then being like, I didn't like it. It's like, why'd you fucking keep playing it, my guy? Move on.
Take it up with him. Take it
I
up with him,
will.
mate.
We got to get him on the show. I need to talk to these motherfuckers and be like, look, dude, go play some indies or something, but freshen it up, right? Because it's like people are out here being like, AAA games suck. It's like, I don't. You're picking games you don't like and then playing them for 500 hours. The hell's wrong with you?
We set him off. Let's talk about some positives now. Should we
Okay,
talk about some more positives? Here's it now.
it's you, buddy. Number
You'll
6.
go 6.
Okay, now this
This
is
is
gonna
almost juicy.
this is gonna be juicy because the reason it's at number 6 is because I, similar to Pete, didn't want to sort of put remasters and remakes too high on the list. But I feel like
Okay.
if I didn't put this game in the list, it would be a complete I would just not be being honest
A
to myself and who
farce.
I am as a person.
We've
So
already got one remake from you anyway, so we don't need the like
yeah,
whole
yeah, but a
parade
full
pack.
remake
You know, you already got
versus a
Resident Evil
remaster.
4 on it.
20%.
Yeah, no, but a
20% of
remake,
this guy's tastemaker. 20% of his list.
but a
Old games.
remake, a remake of a game that I've never played before versus a straight up remaster of a game I played 100 times before.
Guys, FlipScreen Games #1 tastemaker. I got a game to recommend you. Super Mario Brothers, Portal. Let's how about
Tetris.
If they remade Portal and it was different to how Portal plays, then I would probably recommend
You
Portal
guys
in the year
heard of
that
a
it came out.
little indie game called Grand Theft Auto 3? You know, you want to go check that one out? Okay, what do you got for me, bud?
I've never claimed to whatever. Metro Prime Remastered is my number 6 game of the year because I feel like I couldn't put it in the top 5 with all these sort of, newer things coming out. Metro Prime Remastered, I know you guys didn't play it, so I've got a
I
little bit
did
of time
play
to
it.
talk about.
I planned on playing
bullshit.
it.
Yeah. This is why one of my favorite games of all time. I'm talking like on any day you could ask me if it's my favorite game of all time, and I'll say yes one day, and then I'll go, nah, it's Super Metroid another time. Depends how I feel on the day. It is just sublime, and I'm pretty sure I've talked at length about why I love this game on previous episodes of various podcasts. Go back to this came out in February. I'm pretty sure I would have come on and spoke about this game then. But this remaster is just so well done. It's the best looking game on the Switch. It's technically impressive. It does an amazing job of taking all of the multiple control schemes that Metroid Prime has had over the years on the GameCube, on the Wii, and coming up with something new for it that makes it feel more like a modern game, makes it feel more like what we can expect from Metroid Prime 4 when that eventually ever comes out, if. And it just knocks it out the park. And um, when it came back out, or when we knew it was happening, and I was worried that the reviews, maybe more modern audiences wouldn't like it that much. Maybe 15 years of me going, guys, you have to play this game. What if I was about to be proven wrong and people actually didn't like this game? So when the game came out and the reviews started coming in and they were glowing, they were, it's one of the highest rated games of the year. I was like, okay, cool. It's nice that I've been shouting about this game for so long and it still holds up and it's still great, and that we know that it's still the game that I love, and I've not been lucky enough to have those big massive games from that mean so much to me be brought back up very often.
Yeah.
So this was a very special moment for me that in 2023, and I'm glad it happened. I bought it 3 times
Hell yeah.
just because I want more of it. So yeah.
I'm really glad that it lived up to what it could be for you, because that's such a monkey's paw situation when a game you love comes back and it's not right. So for them
Yeah.
to improve on what was there is awesome,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
definitely one like I really hope I have time to get to it this year because, Steve and I both really, really loved Metroid Dread, and that was kind of like a first at bat for both of us to finally get into the series. And I've been wanting to give
Oh yeah.
Prime and the 3D stuff a try. And it's like, what better time
Did you
than
play Fusion though?
now?
You've got to play Fusion. That
Yeah,
game's
Simon and Steve
phenomenal.
playing Fusion. That was great.
Yeah, no,
Zero
I haven't played that one yet.
We need to, when we get some time this year, you need to let me teach you guys about the ways of Metroid, or just play remastered. We know it exists. So
Awesome. All right, Steve, number 6.
just quick preface.
Oh.
When I hear Steve's thing, I'm going to disappear just to blow my nose. I'll be back shortly after. But
Okay, no problem.
Okay. My number 6 is Dredge.
I'm gonna
a
stay
game that
around.
we've
I'm gonna
already heard about from Max.
I'm gonna stick around for this.
I love this game.
Yeah,
I only started playing it a few days ago,
I didn't
but
think this
I've
would make
played
it for
a
that
bunch of it
reason.
already. Yeah, I mean it's not a very long game. It's not
No,
a very
I
big
did it in 2
game. I
days.
feel like
Yeah.
you can explore a lot of it in a couple of days. But it's a really great game, really really cool. I love all the fishing, upgrading my boat, getting like a net, trawling around, like unlocking all of these like special powers that you get that you can do by finding these like trinkets in the ocean and taking it to some weird guy who lives in a dodgy mansion. There's like all of this cool stuff. And then at night, like the panic sets in and all of these weird eyes are looking at you and these
Mhm.
like creepy big fish are coming out to come and eat your boat
Yeah,
and like
and you
it's
hear the boats
scary
knocking
and
around in the distance, don't you? Like, you hear the other boats, you
it's
see
just
the other
yeah.
boats. Yeah.
It's
Just
just so creepy, and there's just something about this game. The atmosphere is phenomenal, the art
Mhm.
style is great, the gameplay is solid. The, like, fishing mini game is probably the most satisfying fishing mini game in any game I've played. It, like, beats out Stardew Valleys by a country mile. It's
Yeah,
like every single fish is, like, a little bit different, and, like, the dredging up of the items is really cool,
yeah.
and, like, you go, like, in between the rings and stuff. Like, all of that stuff really kind of comes together to make a really compelling package. I thought I would like Dave the Diver better than I like Dredge, just because it was a little bit more chill than Dredge. Dredge does that have that element to it that is sort of maybe a little bit more adult, for lack of a better word. But I think that Dredge is the better game. I think it's a phenomenal experience. I'm probably going to end up picking up the DLC as soon as I finish this game. I'm just having such a good time with it.
I have been considering the DLC sort of for weeks now, but, I was hoping it might go on sale. This is our first crossover, right? On the whole
It's the
list?
first crossover. Yeah, we got to
Wow.
6
Dredge is currently our game of
before a
the year,
crossover.
That's
boy.
It is, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Before we get to 5, and I'm sure, Pete, you'll do a break, we should probably recap what's ranking at the
Yeah,
moment
sure.
before we kinda get through.
Go for it.
But yeah, Pete. Oh, well, yours is your 6, and then
Oh,
it'll be
right.
Max
Sorry,
Bucks,
sorry,
Max
sorry. I messed
5.
up your
Yeah.
flow. I'm like, you're doing so great there.
Mm.
I was can't I'll step the fuck aside. Go ahead, man. All right, so my number 6 is Final Fantasy 16. So, I think Final Fantasy 16 is I think the game that the Final Fantasy series needs right now, and I think that or needed right now, and I think that that is a controversial opinion among many longtime Final Fantasy fans. But I think it's been clear for a while now that the game has been struggling to reinvent itself as a kind of more approachable, more action-oriented game rather than trying to make a you know um, like a turn-based game like the days of old, right? Like we're pretty far removed from that at this point. And I think when you compare what Final Fantasy 15 was, right, which is I think a game with a ton of good ideas, but a tortured development cycle and some really really poor execution leading to it being far less than the sum of its parts, right? I think 16 is the first time in a long time that Final Fantasy has offered up an entry that feels worthy of that like upper echelon, right? That I think, any fan of the series reserves for whatever game came out when you were a child that you played first, right? Whether it's 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, right? Like that's most people I know in our age group anyway. Uh this is on that level, I think. And I there are a lot of people, I've talked about it a lot with Sierra in the community about like the combat, right, being made approachable, right? And how I think for some of the more like hardcore action fans in the audience, right, that this could have courted, there was frustration, right, that it wasn't deeper and that it is a more like hack and slash kind of experience. And I would parrot the point I made earlier when Steve was talking about Dave the Diver, right? Where for me, I think the aim of this game is to dial into a type of game that like doesn't really get made anymore, which is the big AAA story-driven, cutscene-driven game where you're on a semi-open place, you're going to go here, you're going to have a fight, you're going to get a cutscene, you're going to advance the story, you're going to meet a character, and you're going to feed into what the game is building, right? Which is its story and the settings that you get to know over the course of the characters' lives, right? And that is from childhood through, you know, adulthood, right? And like well into their adulthood. And getting to see criticisms that I had of the game uh get addressed in real time, right? Like I remember in the early game when you're in your first hideout being like, "Oh, it's kind of lame that like I don't know any of these NPCs names and like it feels so impersonal." And it's like, "Oh, that's because I'm a stranger here." And then like as you do more missions, you start learning everybody's names and then you see these stories start building up in the background and it just like leads to this world that is so lore rich, but not just lore, right? Not just, oh, this is a lived in world with history that's hundreds of years old. It's also, yeah, but I also like know things about the culture of the world and the different countries and how this village's personality is different than this village, right? And how this leader, right, like came to power and why the people support them or don't or whatever. And you get so inundated in that world if you engage in the side content and go through all that stuff that like it it just has I think a level of respect for the story it's trying to tell that it wants it to feel like an epic like this major you know incredible fairy tale. And I think that's what Final Fantasy should be doing. And aside from them and, PlayStation, right? Like there are not a lot of studios making this kind of cutscene driven game anymore. But even more so, like ever since open world came and kind of supplanted this kind of game doesn't get made anymore. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things that about it that don't connect for certain players, but I like a game that wants to be about character and story and the world taking time for lots of cutscenes, right? And lots of small quiet moments and lots of, you know, ability to build tension in the narrative over time so that when I do get things like the dramatic reveal or the culmination of a romance or something like that that it feels earned and it feels big and it feels momentous. And I think those things, the quality of the performances, the quality of the music, and again, I think the combat is fun, but it's not bare knuckle, bruise difficult because this is a game with 70 plus, 80 plus hours of stuff for you to be doing. And if every single boss fight took multiple runs, you'd never see any of it. And, that's those goals aligned with what I wanted out of the game. And I got more out of it the more I played it.
Pete, I think a lot of the things that you've described there, and I'm talking like the sort of semi-open areas that lead you towards a cutscene, that you have time to learn the characters or meet the characters and learn their relationships, and all the stuff you just said, perfectly describes Xenoblade Chronicles.
I know.
If that's a franchise that you've never really engaged with properly, I would say like every single one of them is that in across three different stories.
I I tell you what, man, I am so hopeful that whatever the Switch 2 is has backwards compatibility like boost because the whole reason I fell off that game is that it was unplayable
Oh, in
in
handheld.
handheld.
Yeah, yeah, I
And I
agree.
was like, dude, like, so there's a lot of quiet downtime in this game. This would be perfect for me to be able to chip off the non-story important stuff in handheld and do the big stuff on the TV. And I hit a point where I'm like, I'm 30 hours into this. I'm never going to be done with this if this is the only way I can play it. And I
I
just,
will, I'll send you a little message in a bit, and I'll explain a different way you can play this game.
good, please, because that was my concern is that like I want to do everything. So I'm like, how do I prioritize? How do it's a daunting one, but I'm there. I'm there with you. All right. So that's my number 6. So Steve, why don't you recap our games thus far?
Yeah, so leading number one, Dredge. Then we got Metroid Prime Remastered and Final Fantasy tied for number 2. Tied for number 3, Cocoon, Chance of Sinnoh, and Starfield. And we've got Super Mario Brothers Wonder, Tears of the Kingdom, and Pizza Tower tied. Resident Evil 4 Remake, Baldur's
For
Gate
3 points.
3.
They're tied for 3 points.
They are Super Mario RPG all tied for 2 points, and Dave the Diver and Mortal Kombat 1 at the bottom of the pile with only 1 point each. And I have a feeling they're not going to get any more points.
I think that's probably true. But hey, you know what?
We're
It's
gonna see the
an
end of
honor
those
just to be
days.
on the list, right?
Okay, Todd.
All right. Thank you, guys. We've got 5 more games to get through on our list. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of January. Go and blow your nose, Max. They are Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Sobe, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Loves Cats, and also Boobies, Ty the Dude, and Waka Hula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. You're all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you haven't already checked out our end of the year specials on Nintendo Noise and FlipScreen Games podcast, make sure you go check those out. We had some big old specials where we played some games. They were a lot of fun. We had a great time. I think you will have a great time if you go and check them out. And we've got a lot of very special episodes coming up for y'all in the next couple weeks as well, right? Next week, we're going to be checking in our predictions. We've got talk about the Steam Awards over on the Steam Deck podcast. A very exciting kickoff to the year and lots to look forward to, of course. So you're going to want to make sure that you're a part of it. And of course, what better way to do that than heading over to flipscreen.games? That's our website where you will find links to all the places you can get involved in the community, whether that's writing into the show, joining the Discord to keep the conversation rolling between episodes, or heading over to Patreon to show your support of this and all of our sister shows. We thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Flip Screen Games podcast and for joining us here in another beautiful year of Flip Screen Games. We're back. Let's get into it. Number 5, Max, the top 5 games of 2023. What is your number 5?
My number 5 game of 2023 is Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Ooh, okay.
I was a big fan of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order before. I think it's, as someone who has fallen off of the Star Wars movies of late at the TV shows, I find it all too exhausting. I'm sort of done with Star Wars overall, but I will come back for Cal and his crew, the Mantis crew, and the stuff they've got going on. And I think the direction they took to instead look backwards to the sort of High Republic era was really really good choice. I think we got to see some really interesting design and some really interesting stuff, and we didn't have to wonder where this was set and wonder how this all fits into the Republic and where we are at the time and why the things they've done here don't matter in the grand scheme of the movies, yada yada yada. I think it's a perfect little microcosm. And yeah, I think the game was really great. It took what was before Jedi Fallen Order, I think was very much if you was to explain it to you, it was like, oh, it's Dark Souls meets Metroid meets Zelda, but it's a Star Wars game. Whereas this very much tried to take itself in a different direction and be its own thing, not just a mishmash of other things. While still remaining a lot of keeping a lot of those elements, there was still the sort of soulsy elements of like you die, you get your stuff, you rest, things heal. They still had the sort of Metroid elements of like I pick up a new item and so now I go here because I can go here. I sort of put it in like larger areas, more open world. And yeah, I just think it did it really successfully. The story was great. I think the the there was a level of fun in it that I would say that reminded me of Insomniac in some ways, where it's like, oh, I've got this new ability, so I can do this really cool thing where I'm like flying through the air, or I can zip line onto things and jump about, and like it just felt fun. To just play, and also the adding of the weapon types you can have, like before where you could have you could swap between your dual ended lightsaber or your two lightsabers, whereas now you have like different stances, and there's one with a pistol, and there's one that I use a lot, which is the two-handed claymore style um weapon, and all the customization options you could have. You could customize your character. You give him a beard. You give him different hair. You could put different outfits on him, change the
Oh, the
colors.
mullet was great. The
Yeah,
mullet
the
was
mullet
the
was
one
great.
to
The
go
mullet and
for.
mustache. Yeah, you go woo wee. If woo wee was a Star Wars character, it'd be that guy. The level of customization you can do the lightsaber. It was just really really great. I understand that there were some technical issues at launch, and I don't know what the console versions are like, but I played it pretty competently on PC. Was very happy with how it looked, how it ran, and yeah, I just think it was a really great game, and um, yeah, I think it deserves its place at my number 5, really.
This was a devastating omission for me that I just didn't get to this game this year. It came out at such an unfortunate time,
Mhm.
and it was like there was that week gap between it and Tears of the Kingdom, and guess who was on vacation that week? It was me. So I never got to play it. I
Mhm.
also love the original, and yeah, as somebody who has been a lifelong Star Wars fan, but has been, disappointed with the output as of late, right? Like I'm with you. Where like this is the most exciting thing I think going on in Star Wars right now, and I am very eager to make time for it this year.
Mhm.
Um, here's hoping.
You really should. You really should.
I'll get to it eventually. I know I will. It's just a matter of is it now or is it oh no the next one's coming out. I
Yeah.
better you know
Well,
we'll
I didn't
see.
get around to I didn't get around to Fallen Order till the year after, there's a
Yeah,
the 2020 was a big, like, catch up on 2019 stuff for me, and the Jedi Fallen
I'm
Order very much
hoping
fell in that, so
I'm hoping 2024 has a similar flavor to it, where because there's not a ton announced
The
right now, right? Like there is, but
I
not a
mean, the Disney, like, announced on their blog earlier that the Star Wars game from Ubisoft is coming later this year, so
allegedly.
you've got
Yeah.
a Star Wars game coming this year,
later
so
this year,
Later.
later this year.
later this
We've
year,
still got
yeah.
Q1
time.
though is pretty empty right now, Steve. I got some time. We gotta play some seasonal
Yeah,
who's
games.
well,
developing that for us?
Nintendo Direct's probably right around the fucking corner then,
Yeah.
and we're gonna drop, like, a new console. You know what always happens.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know how it
big
goes.
big big plans to play all the games, then all the games start coming out, so what do you do?
Mhm.
Play as many as you can.
Yeah.
Keep your head above water. All right, Steve, number 5.
Steve.
My number 5 is Diablo 4. Um,
Interesting.
I
Nice.
yeah, I put a lot of thought on where this one would rank on my list because Diablo is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I adore 1, 2, and 3, especially 2. 2 holds a special place in my heart. And I think Diablo 4, despite having its flaws, despite me not necessarily liking the fact that the enemies are kind of level with you and you never really get that sense of like, oh my god, my new sword is swiping through these like butter that you get from the previous games. I still had a really great time with it. I played that initial beta, and I was really excited to then play it again the following weekend, despite my save being wiped. And I played as a totally different character, and then the saves got wiped again, and I played it all again when it came out. I have played like Act One of this game 3 times, and I just had such a good time with it. I've not dug into any of the seasonal content. I know there's some issues that people have with that, but seemingly they're
Seems
correcting
like
their
that got
way
that
with
kinda
the
fixed,
latest
right?
season. Yeah, I think a lot of that got fixed and they kind of listened to the feedback, which is good, and it bodes well for the future of the game. And I do think there's always like two kinds of games with Diablo. You can just play through the campaign and have a good time and just enjoy the story and play it. And then there's the end game stuff where the seasonal content comes in. And I'm really the player who just plays the campaign, plays the story, and has a good time with it, and then doesn't really play any of the end game stuff where I'm grinding a new character every season to get the latest loot. So yeah, I think it takes what Diablo was, merges like some of the best bits of Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 together, screws some bits up, but on the whole, it's a great map, a great story, great campaign, absolutely gorgeous style. And it is a Diablo game which I've been wanting for like a decade, and I'm really happy that it's here.
I was not sure where this one I like, when we got to the top 5, I was like, "Did Steve not rank this one?" Like,
Mhm.
wasn't sure. I didn't think it was gonna make it that high. Okay. So number 5, for me is Pikmin 4. I
Nice.
am one of
Yes.
the psychopaths, out there in the world that absolutely adores this game and adores Pikmin. I think Pikmin 4 is really, really exceptional. I think in a softer year, I could have seen this I could see this game getting a lot more attention. I think, the last couple games in the or not even last couple, right? Like, there's a ton. Pikmin 1 through 3, I feel like each game, uh feels like it's about exploring a new idea or a new gimmick, right? And there's been this kind of steady level of innovation through the franchise over time. I think Pikmin 4 is simultaneously like the most different and also boils down a lot of what is good about Pikmin and presents it in a way that is fresh and that I think is more approachable, right? Like there was a couple really big changes, right? Like making adjustments to the way that like time influences the game, not having like this, ticking resource clock that you need to be contending with, encouraging you to take your time a little bit more, to explore, to take the opportunity to 100% levels. Those things I think were really welcome changes and things that will make the game a lot less intimidating to new players. And, for those like hardcore old school fans that do want that more um time trial kind of challenge to it, like they have modes that speak to you, right? And that give you that same flavor and allow you to kind of, you know, um, have your cake and eat it too, right? And I think the ability to like uh, have a kind of like base system and like a leveling up system that are both newer things, right? Where you're constantly like you're finding missing castaways that are unlocking side missions. You're getting upgrades to you and to your like dog companion, right? Which was another major innovation. There was like the night missions, which is a totally new thing, right? It's like there's so much about the game that is new, and none of those new features feel tacked on. None of them feel underdeveloped or underutilized. It's like there's such a clear vision for the game. And if you were somebody that like came in on Pikmin 3 and you got really used to like using the multiple characters and breaking up your group, you could do that in Pikmin 2 as well, but not in quite the same way. Um, like, you can do that, right, with Ochi, but, like, if you don't wanna do that and you wanna have a more, like, Pikmin 1 type experience where you move as a group and, like, that's how you're doing things, like, the game allows you to play that way, right? And the fact that it kind of, I think, meets whatever player wherever they're at as much as it needs to, um, but not so much so that it doesn't allow you to figure things out for yourself is just really smart, It's good, meaningful, uh innovation and iteration, which is what you want out of a sequel, especially a long gestating sequel, right? Like you get a Pikmin game like every 10 years, right? And like I'm glad that it was good and that it lived up to the
Mhm.
hype and that it was a game that was good enough to make my top 5 on a year where so many other games came extremely correct. I really think people should try this one out. I know I turned a lot of people in the Discord onto Pikmin this year by going and trying this game. I think if you've been interested in Pikmin, if it's one that you've thought about taking the plunge on and you've just never had your inroad, I think this is a really good one to start, and I think it will probably be, the template that we build the next one off of, right? So give it a shot.
Another one that's on my list, because I liked Pikmin 3, and I wanted to, I wanted to play it, but never got around to it again. Um, so yes.
I would say this is my favorite Pikmin game now.
Interesting. Okay, that's good.
Did we
Is
get
it?
3 Pikmin games on Switch this year then? 1
Yeah,
and
we
2
got
came
1,
out
2,
this
and
year,
1 and
right?
2
1,
both
2,
came
and
out,
4.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You can it's like it's one of the few Nintendo franchises that you can actually play the entire thing on Switch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Yeah, that and I'm sure there's more. I can't be bothered.
I guess you
It's like,
can't play Hey You Pikmin, the 3DS game, but
who gives a
that's
shit?
all right. We'll miss out
Not
on
just
that one.
Hey Pikmin, hey?
Hey
Hey,
Yeah.
Pikmin.
you pick,
Sorry, Hey
yeah,
Pikmin.
yeah. No points for you. No
Number
points for
5. All
you.
right, so number 4 from you, Max.
Number 4 from me. My number 4 is Alan Wake 2. It's a
All
it's a
right.
late comer for me.
Wow, okay.
Because it was just on a ridiculous sale on the Epic Store. It cost me £21 for Alan Wake 2, and then they sent me a key for Alan Wake Remastered for buying it 2 months after release. Anyway, fantastic game. Proper like an earworm, but like for video games, like a brainworm, I guess, or an eyeworm, whatever. Like it's just it has
I
stuck
don't
in my
like
head.
Eyeworm. Let's do Brainworm.
Brainworm sounds way worse than eyeworm, but whatever.
No, I don't know. There's something about something in your eye that just feels so gross.
I've seen brainworms exist. That's the oh well. It's I've not stopped thinking about it since I beat it, and I keep wanting to just dive back into this New Game Plus, but I know that there's other things I wanna get around to, and yeah, it's just it's 2 games in one essentially. You know, you're playing a more traditional, modern sort of survival horror, and then you're playing like this weird dreamlike sequence. I think it's impressive. It's things like, you know, you make a change in the world or you choose something in the world and it changes instantly. There's a lot of things with like you know, you don't know if what you're seeing is real or if what you're seeing is fake, or you know, the story is so complex and interwoven, and like the live action elements combine well with the real elements, and then there's the two stories that run concurrently. There are bits that appear in both of them, but you don't know which is the real one, or yeah, it's just such an achievement, I think, in video game storytelling, and it can only be told through video games. We saw at the Game Awards they performed Herald of Darkness, with the sort of the in-game band, and Sam Lake got up and danced, and they had Matthew Peretta go up and do the singing, and all of those things, on the Game Awards was really cool, but when you get to that section in the game, I won't spoil any of it. That's my favorite gaming moment of this year, is the level where that song is featured. Um, yeah, this was just triumph of a game, and I'm really looking forward to the DLC that's planned for this year. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it connects into the wider Remedy universe. You know, as someone who was a big Control fan, seeing elements of Control sort of featured in it and how it links into those sort of things, sort of sends you down like a rabbit hole. And I think this is the kind of game. So this sort of game is the kind of game that makes you want to get a big corkboard and pin a load of stuff
Mhm.
together and string it all together. But the good thing about
Do
Alan
it.
Wake
Do
2
the
is
video.
no, but the good thing about Alan Wake 2 is you literally do that in the game. You go into
Okay, that's
you
so
go into
cool.
the mind and you literally put things together and it all gets strung together and you can sort of see how it comes together, and it's just a yeah, just a really unique,
But do
really
they work
impressive experience.
for the Federal Bureau of Control in Alan Wake 2? Like, is it that intrinsically linked?
There is the Bureau of Control is featured in Alan Wake 2, yeah.
Okay.
And I
So it's
do think
definitely the same universe then.
yes. Well, yeah, I mean, the Control Alan Wake DLC specifically sets up, this. There's also, like, a character in, Quantum Break, which I played recently, that seems to be linked in many ways. Even though it's not confirmed to be linked, there's, like, links to Control that they're linked to. It's very confusing. Like I say, the court will be yeah. Alan Wake 2 is a fantastic game, and I think
Mhm.
if you I think it didn't sell very well because it didn't have a physical version, and people maybe weren't too sold on the first game. It seems
And
quite
it's on the Epic
niche
Games Store,
on the
which
Epic
I
Games
do not think
Store.
helps it.
But I mean, it's the game wouldn't exist without Epic, and I'm happy
Mhm.
to spare
Yeah.
that as a you know, bear that burden to be able to play it. Same way Bayonetta 2 wouldn't exist without Nintendo, you know.
Right. I think it's worth pointing out, you know, whether it leads to an Alan Wake 4 getting made or whatever, right? Like is I think up for debate, right? But like the idea that like people are saying, "Oh, like it failed because of the Epic Game Store." It's like, I mean, to your point, it wouldn't exist without the Epic Game Store. And
Yeah.
what I think a lot of people don't think about, um when you talk about games like that, is that the game was probably profitable or at least paid for before it even sold a copy because of
Yeah,
Epic's
yeah.
involvement, right? So, um, you gotta take your like W's where you can get them, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's great that the game exists because
Yeah.
it very easily couldn't have, and
It's
that's
yeah,
that.
so it's amazing to think of, like, there's a video 10 years ago of Sam Lake saying, "Look, Alan Wake 2 is not gonna happen because the first game didn't do well, and people don't really wanna do it, so I'm afraid it's just not gonna happen." And then this year, Sam Lake's at the Game Awards accepting awards. He's up on stage singing and dancing. You know, his visions come true. He stars in the game. Uh, yeah, it's just a triumph of just, like, modern meta storytelling without having to delve too deep into, like, the multiverse stuff that I think is a bit overplayed. I think it's just very clever and confusing, but also, like, it makes you wanna look more into it and work things out for yourself. Yeah, really, really great.
Awesome, man. Steve, number 4.
My number 4 is American Arcadia, which
Oh,
we've
wow.
spoken about a lot
Wow,
on the
number
show.
4. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Damn.
Crazy.
I struggled with where to put this because there are parts of the game that I don't like the gameplay, where you're just pushing a stick to move right, and there's not enough there. But the story on this game really edges those moments out, and some of the gameplay elements are so interesting and so smart. The fact that you have this like third person side scrolling perspective, then there's like the second person that's controlling the CCTV cameras, and then it breaks into this like first person game at certain moments, and you're just like a completely different character. And the story itself is just like it's a riff on the Truman Show, right? It's that these people are in a TV show and they don't know it, and someone's breaking out and someone's helping them break out. But the story went to places I didn't expect. It took twists and turns, and it was just on the whole a really exciting story with a great visual style and some good gameplay. It's not great gameplay. The gameplay is good, but I don't think that's why you're really playing this game. I think you're here for the puzzles are pretty compelling at times, but the story is really the main event that you're coming to American Arcadia for.
I
It's a
I
really
feel like
interesting story.
based on the demo that I played, I definitely hear what you're saying in terms of like a lot of the moment to moment gameplay not being exciting. How do you feel about the novelty of the switching perspectives and stuff as like a gameplay element? Because I know that was something you and I both responded to when we played the Steam Next Fest demo, and we thought that was really novel. I'm interested how that carries over 8 hours of gameplay. Does that hold up?
Those are the elements that are pretty good, and, there's elements where those are the kind of puzzles that you're solving at times, where there's, like, a part where you've gotta kinda pick up some luggage from somewhere, and you've gotta figure out with, like, these intricate web of CCTV cameras, how to get a piece of luggage from one screen, like, one shoot all the way to the end, and you're just, like, going back and forth through the CCTV cameras hacking. Those are just real cool puzzle moments, and the fact that you're controlling 2 characters at once, I think, is really cool, that you're moving Trevor through the world while the second character is hacking things and allowing you to kinda get through and into different places that you wouldn't necessarily be able to access otherwise. I think that element is a real success in the same way that I think the first person elements are a real success as well. When that first happened in the demo, it was a real surprise for me. I was like, oh shit, okay. Now this feels like a totally different game than I was expecting. I was expecting this to just be like an inside puzzle platformer style game the entire time, but it wasn't that, and it's not that. It very much is a story driven game with some interesting gameplay elements. There are just too many moments where essentially you're listening to dialogue and all you've got to do is push a stick right. You could just have the computer push that stick right for me and have it be a cutscene if you need it to be. Or you could probably, and what they probably should do is add some more compelling gameplay elements to be doing while I'm pushing that stick forward. There's parts where I'm pushing a stick just right for 2 minutes at a time, which I think is why it probably didn't rank higher than it did, because the story on this game really is, I think, a special story that's worth playing.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I really enjoyed what I played of that game, and I would love to make some time for it. It was one of the games I planned on playing over the break, but one of the games that will be coming up shortly ended up eating up a lot of that time. So hopefully I'll get to that one soon here. But I'm excited. I'm more motivated to push it up the list, seeing how highly you ranked it. Because yeah, I knew you were
Yeah,
enjoying it, but I didn't know you were number 4 enjoying it.
Yeah, that's really, surprising.
That's big.
I'd got to kind of the last section, and it was like the last 2 chapters, and I just couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop playing it, and it was just like this, like some of these like oh my god moments that I think are pretty rare in video games.
All right. Nice. So that's me then. Number 4 for me was Super Mario Wonder. So
Hi.
yeah, definitely. It's a 2D Mario game, Max. Of course, it's
Yeah.
so I I think Super Mario Wonder is a really great game. I think it is uh a real step forward for 2D Mario. I think the new Super Mario Brothers franchise, it's kind of cool to dunk on it now because I think it overstayed its welcome, but obviously some really innovative important games in that series, but I think you hit a point where it definitely had been diminishing returns in terms of vision and personality and style, and something that you saw, right, in the original 4 Mario games, right? Each one has a distinct flavor and personality, and I think you got away from that to a point where, you made the comment, I think in our the week before Wonder came out when you had the pre-release coverage, Max, about how New Super Mario Bros. Had this kind of almost like corporate Mario feel where it's like, this is the
Mhm.
house style and this is how it looks,
Yeah.
right? Rather than allowing each one to feel more auteur driven and allow it to have its own sense of identity. And I think Mario Wonder like finally broke um that mold again. And I think it was really important to do that for the future of 2D Mario, to make it relevant again, to make it something that people are excited about again, and that it's a game that can be in the conversation for game of the year or something like that, right? And I think I talked a lot about what about this game didn't work for me when it came out, and I think most of that is, I think, the game's core idea being experimentation is both to its benefit and detriment, in my opinion. I think um the shiny new toy gimmickness of every level works, but I think it leads to the game feeling like it doesn't have a really clear identity to me. Whereas like its identity is mostly uh, for me anyway, right? Is its aesthetic, right? Is the changes it's made to the music, to the sound effects, the fact that it changed Mario's jump sound a little bit, the fact that like again, like these core sounds that like the back of your hand if you're a Mario person are different, right? Like, does make the whole thing feel novel and fresh and and I don't want to discount any of that stuff, right? Like those things are incredible and they're a big part of why this is a top 5 game for me this year. And I think it's a really bold, important step forward for Mario. And I don't think it is quite the step forward I was hoping for when it comes to gameplay, right?
Mhm.
Because I think that grab bag gimmick nature of the Wonder Seeds, and each level, even, right? On some level, being like a gimmick, right? Of like, this is the one where you're there. This is the one with all the guys that jump in unison with you. This is the
Yeah.
one where the little gopher guy with the Yoshi back throws the seeds at you as you go, right? And it's like, not to say that those things didn't happen in Mario games before, but I think that this game feels so predicated on each level is a gimmick or the next version of that gimmick, right? Of like, this is the first time you do that. Now here it is, but it's hard. Like, that's not inherently a problem, but I think it just leads to like falling on the wrong side of doing too much to me compared to something like Mario Odyssey, which you brought up earlier, Max, where like everything uh is so rooted in the innovation of this game is Cappy, and not just the taking over different things and how that allows you to interact with the world, but also how it changes the way Mario moves. And I think that's the fundamental change I want to see in what comes next, whether that's a Mario Wonder 2 or ideally Super Mario, whatever, right? The next sub
Mhm.
line, and it's something new and fresh again. um, is I want that kind of innovation, right? In the way that like you look at Super Mario 1 versus the movement in Super Mario 2 and it's super different. Or like when you add Yoshi in Super Mario World and how that changes the fact that like you have an extra hit in battle, you have an extra jump if you need it, you have the flutter jump, you have the different colored Yoshis that have different abilities. Like those kinds of changes that are more fundamental, more core to the systems are, I think, what I really want to see them try to commit to, and be like, what is next, right? Like, what is the thing that makes this feel different in the way that Mario's 1, 2, 3, and 4 all feel different, right? Um, and that's a tall order, and that's a taller order every time you do it again, right? So, like, fair enough. Um, this is me nitpicking a game that I think is nearly perfect. right? But that is the bar by which you judge the best Mario games because the best Mario games are perfect.
I think fair enough, and I'm glad that it's sort of got enough here. I mean, it could even come up again. We never know, but um, maybe not. But I'm glad that yeah, they got the place they got for you. I thought it might be higher, to be honest, just because I know what a huge fan you are
Man,
of
it was
those games.
close.
But
It
yeah,
was really close. Yeah, it got edged out at the last minute.
shall I jump into the top three? Shall I start top three
It's
right
time for
now,
the top
Yeah,
guys?
three,
let's do
Max.
it.
Okay, so I want to hear no arguments. By the way, my number three game of 2023
Hold on, wait, was
is
that our
Zen.
second repeat game?
Yeah, that's it. That's in
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
Incredible, incredible, boys. I
right.
gotta say, the spread that we are bringing you here on
I'm
FlipScreen, we're playing
spreading.
all the hits, everybody.
I'm spreading. I've spread for you every single week. My number three is Xenoblade Chronicles 3: Future Redeemed. Now,
I thought
I
that might
don't,
A,
happen.
a
but I don't.
DLC? Come on, Max. I was told I couldn't have a
Two
DLC.
remakes and a DLC. Max is out here bucking all the rules. He don't give a
Now,
fuck.
is it a DLC or is it a 40-hour standalone adventure?
Who's to say?
Because I
DLC
think
for
it's a
Xenoblade
standalone.
is the length of a regular video game. It totally counts.
Yeah, I think if Phantom, whatever it is, Liberties can be sort of spoken about in Game of the Year contention in the main game awards, I think Xenoblade Chronicles 3: Future Redeemed, which for me was, it was a story told in the Xenoblade timeline. It just happens to have the mechanics of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Whatever. This game did everything I wanted it to do. Um, from the moment they first ever started showing off Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I was like, are they going to do? Not, I don't want to spoil anything or sort of give anything away for previous games or whatever, but I wanted Xenoblade Chronicles 3 to do something, and I feel like it didn't quite hit that in the main game, but that's fine because they were obviously setting out for this. Um, and this is a experience that is so quality. It takes everything that Xenoblade's ever done in terms of like its main gameplay loop, its the characters, the way that the story works, the way that the world is, the way that the relationships happen, the way that just the way that the boss fights, all that stuff, and it just condenses it into its most like succinct form of itself. Um, and it's an impressive achievement to have then hit the bar that I wanted to hit and consistently kept doing it. And this was so good that I then went back and did another 30 hours of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 after sort of finishing it last year. I think I put it quite high on my list last year. But I was still like, oh, I didn't end up finishing a lot of the content. I went back and I finished all that content because this game jazzed me so much about the franchise as a whole and the gameplay loop. It gave me a better appreciation for what I'd played last year because it just did it so well, and the music is fantastic, and the fact that it can give you familiar characters and brand new characters and make you care about all of them equally, and not only expand on Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but also sort of just the franchise as a whole, and sort of like basically perfectly cap off the Xenoblade franchise. If this was like the end of Xenoblade as a franchise, I don't think it will be because I think it's a sort of a tentpole RPG for Nintendo. Um, I'm glad that this is it. And yeah, just.
I hope it is the end, not because they're not good, but because I would love for them to make a new IP that people
Yeah.
could like jump onto. Because I think Xenoblade feels so inapproachable to a lot of people because it's like 3 is its own thing, but also it definitely connects to the other two, and they're like 30 years old. So
Mhm.
like, what are you gonna do about that? It's like, shoot,
Maybe they just need to like pull a Final Fantasy and just keep it Xenoblade Chronicles, but
yeah,
just have a
maybe,
fresh
I
story.
think they've set a precedent now where but they are a fresh story. The Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and Xenoblade
yeah,
Chronicles 2 are their own separate things,
sure,
right?
sure.
There's just little
I
bits
feel like
and
maybe
links and
you
yeah,
start fresh, you
yeah, I'm
know?
okay with that. I'd like them to elaborate on some of the stuff that they're Monolith Soft are so good at creating worlds and like when I was playing this and when I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 itself, just the comparison between what the Pokemon games have been doing with their open worlds compared to this, like they are so incredible at creating these large sprawling worlds, and this doesn't even sort of do it in the same way that one and two did, where 1 and 2 are very clearly set on objects and you can see the different parts. This is just like a world, but the verticality and the way it all mashes together and to sort of take that and condense it down to a much smaller experience, but still make it feel like substantially like a full game is very impressive. So yeah, I argued whether this would count for a while, and it was like, no, why would it not count? Why would this large standalone experience where you start at level 1, you finish at level 80, and 40 hours in
It
length or
counts.
whatever, yeah.
Definitely counts. I mean, Max, I was going to include Hitman Freelancer on the list,
I know
and
you
that
were. I could have guessed that.
that's like I've played like 80 to 100 hours of that game this year, and that was just an update to Hitman 3.
Yeah. So, yeah, on that note, why don't you start your top 3 off now, Steve?
My number 3 is Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Nice.
Oh,
Let's
there we
go.
go.
Love that. Love that for
adored
you.
this game. It was like from the moment I started it, and you go into that first level, and everything's like singing, and you're tripping on acid with the warp pipes like slugging you along the way.
They're doing what
Like
to
I
you?
was just smiling from like beginning to end playing this game. It's so charming, it's so wonderful, it's so approachable. But if you want some challenges, they're there. You can go find them. You can go to the little secret little world and go and play those really ridiculously difficult challenges. The badges kind of mix up the gameplay. They can be those little crutches that you need in order to get you to areas and help you with the gameplay, or they can just make each level fresh every single time. You can kind of play it in a different way. I think that kind of makes up for the characters all playing the same for me. And I just, yeah, I loved this game. I
Yep.
don't agree with Pete. I agree with Max. I liked that every level was a different gimmick, and it was like it felt fresh every single time. It's like, oh, I'm not doing the same thing again. Yes, there are those levels where it's like, oh, it's the one where it's like I'm in the room and I've got to find the hidden blocks, or it's the one where I've got to run really fast and beat the Wiggler.
Mhm.
But for the most part, I went into a level not knowing what I was going to get, not knowing what to expect when I found that Wonder Seed. And when I found it, something magical happened every single time. And it was always something different. It was always something fresh. I was always kind of amazed by what it was. And I think it just shows a level of creativity that they were able to make dozens of levels and not one of them felt samey or repetitive or boring. I enjoyed getting from beginning to end of all of the levels, and it was just such a good time and good experience.
I fully
Yeah,
100% agree.
couldn't agree
This
more.
is the first triple. The first
It is the
triple.
first triple. It might be the only
This is the
triple. Who
only one,
knows?
right? This is definitely, I think. Well, I guess that. Well, we'll see.
No, it's probably not
No,
the only one.
Probably not. Probably not.
I think there's one more.
Probably right. All right.
Steve.
My number 3 is Sea of Stars.
Wow.
Okay. I thought this
I
was gonna be your number one. I really thought this was gonna be your number one.
I adore this game. I adore this game. It is really, really something special. I think if you are a fan of kind of the lineage of old school JRPGs, right? Like this, I think in the way that we talk about Shovel Knight being like, what if you made a modern NES game, right? Um, this to me feels like that for Super Nintendo JRPGs, right? Like it is very much a big influence by Chrono Trigger, right? And I think it captures the tone, I think, and kind of style of those games uh in a really meaningful way, and I think it evolves the formula and brings a lot forward that or a lot into the formula that kind of that feels fresh and pushes it forward, right? Like there's a lot of really cool dynamic elements to the turn-based gameplay, right? There is this kind of you all your characters, right, like can take their turn at the same time, right? Whenever it's your turn, you choose the order that you take your turns in, and enemies will have these like little plaques that come above them before they're about to do a major attack, right? So it could be like fire, moon, sword, blunt weapon, right? Like a hammer or whatever. And you need to stack those abilities and hit all of those before the counter runs out. And like that's how you keep momentum in the battles. And I it's just such a good system. It's really fun, it's really thought-provoking, and it is challenging, but not to the point where the game forces you to like get in that kind of like, okay, I can't beat this, so I'm gonna go grind, right?
Mhm.
Like I never got to a battle or something where I couldn't think my way out of it. Uh, and if I was losing, it was because I wasn't prepared the way I needed to be, not because I was under leveled, right? And I was like, oh, I'm feeling forced to go funnel myself through more side stuff or whatever. Uh, so I think the best thing I can say about this game, right, aside from the many nice things I'll continue to say about it, is that I got to the point several days ago where I was ready to roll credits. I got to like the final boss, final confrontation, and then I found out that there was a true ending to the game, and I put in basically double the time in just a few days to get the true ending. I am almost done with it now. I'm gonna go finish it upstairs right after this. I'm like at the last thing I need to do to roll credits on it a second time. And yeah, I mean, I enjoyed every minute of it. There are a few gripes I have with the game on a systems level, that, and not even maybe a systems level, like maybe more like a quality of life level that kept it from being higher on this list. Because while doing the side content that was relevant for getting the true ending, I found myself getting really frustrated with some of the things that I found to be minor annoyances throughout the game overall. Like, for example, there's no fast travel in this game whatsoever. There are abilities and things you'll unlock later in the game that make traversal faster. But when you're not on the overworld, when you're on a map, you move at one speed. There's no way to go faster. And whenever you are done with whatever you're doing in a space, you need to uh, walk to one of the two exits at the
Oh.
beginning or the end of it. So when it comes time for like late game for you to backtrack to find collectibles that you missed or to go back to a place that you went in the context of the story, it's miserable, right? Like to a point where I was really frustrated because content that I was otherwise enjoying was like bogged down in just trudging back and forth between areas. And the game expecting me to remember the layout of a map I haven't been at for weeks, right? In real life time. And and like little things where like there's this one side mission with an NPC, right? Who is usually in this one spot and he moves to two other spots during the course of that mission on the same map, and they don't tell you that though. So like I went to where he was and I was like, "Oh, he's not here. Surely I must be in the wrong place." And I go somewhere else and he's not there either. And then I go and look at a YouTube video or a guide or whatever to be like, "What am I missing?" And oh no, he was where you were. He's just in a different area than he's ever been before, and there's nothing to indicate that he would have moved.
Mhm.
So it's like, what the fuck, right? And it's like, again, I can't fast travel, so I've now twice had to run through this fucking level and back. And it's just like, even if it only takes 5 minutes, that's 20 minutes going there and back and there and back that I could have been playing the game and completing an objective, right? And those things are annoying, but they're really not a problem in the context of the main game because you're just going forward, right? Like you're moving through the areas you're moving through, and it is what it is, right? It doesn't come up that often. But for me to like this game so much that I want to do 20 more hours in it and then to be like feeling like I'm being punished a little bit because the game didn't think about the fact that maybe I don't want to trudge through the whole map every time I got to do something is frustrating. And it's like I think I should be able to just open up the damn map and click to where I want to go, right? When I'm cleaning up end game content. And the game doesn't do a good job of like tracking collectibles for you or anything like that. So like I became very reliant on a list from IGN to go through a checklist to make sure that I had 60 of this fucking individual collectible, that a bunch of them only become available after you get abilities through the game. So it's like just those little things are not enough to knock down like the overall incredible quality of the experience. Um, but they were enough to have me feel frustrated that it's like, man, like these are little quality of life things that would have made that back 20 hours, probably like 15 hours for one thing, but also the pace of it would have been more enjoyable and it wouldn't have felt like, oh, the first 90% of this game pacing was perfect and the last 10% I'm like banging my head against the wall trying to find stuff, you know?
I
Um
think is that entirely
you're
optional? If
muted,
like
Steve.
me,
Oh,
oh,
wait,
am
no,
I?
you're muted on my end. I'm sorry.
If
I
like
can
me,
hear.
you don't give a shit about any of that stuff, about collectibles, about ticking off things and being a completionist, can you just ignore it? Can you just have that good experience you had
Oh
with
yeah,
that 90% and just like get through to the end and just put and not
absolutely.
worry about any of that?
My motivation for that was because of how much I like the game, right? And like I beat the game and you roll credits and there's like this moment where it's like, "Hey, this thing has opened up." And I was like, "Oh, like there must be a post game thing." And that was when I found out about the true ending and I was like, "Oh, okay." I can't say why I felt this way without spoiling something very major in the game that I would not want to spoil, but the emotional investment I had in the story, its world, and its characters was what motivated me to work towards that true ending, not
Mhm.
that I wanted to get all the collectibles or anything like that. It was that I like this game so much that it's important to me that I get the quote unquote, best right ending or whatever. I want to see my characters all end in the best place possible. I want to walk away, with the most optimal happy ending, whatever, right? Like it's the way I would recommend somebody's like, you gotta replay Undertale to get the true ending, right? And it's like, I mean, if you're not gonna do that, you should still play through it once, right? Like, absolutely.
I only
Um,
played through it once and I still thought it was a great game.
Still insane. You gotta play it again. Uh,
I wanna play it again and just be nasty and kill everything.
No, you should never do that. No one should do a genocide run. Toby Fox is a brilliant artist for creating it, but no one should ever do it. Um, and, yeah, so I think that side content is worth doing. I think it's good enough, and some of it is, like, excellent. But yeah, if you just wanna roll it in 20 and main path it, it's well worth doing. And this is the game that had my favorite soundtrack this year. It is out of this world good. It is like wall to wall bops and the game is so good at it's like the John Williams thing of establishing a theme and then like doing that theme in a bunch of different styles and like changing it
Okay.
depending on the what's going on, right? Like a theme that's like, oh, okay, like this character, right? This is the theme that plays whenever they're, you know, like, whenever they have like a like, let me rally everybody behind
They're
me.
like
Like,
amped up, ready to go, yeah.
yeah, but then there'll be like a really deep character moment for that character. And instead you get that same theme, but it's minor or it's slower or it's quieter and more intimate because it's, that character's regular bombastic energy is muted and it's like the way that it creates moments like that is just so artful. Yeah, I could talk a lot more about this game. It's really good, and I think I anyone who's a turn-based fan, you'd be doing yourself a massive disservice if you don't check it out. I think even if you're not a big turn-based person, I think it is approachable enough to like be inviting for a new player, but challenging enough that it's not like this the criticism I levy at Pokemon all the time, right? Where it's like it's so easy that it's too easy. You can't just button mash your way through it. You're gonna need to put some thought into it. Um, and I mean that's the balance I'm looking for, right? Is I don't want to be forced to grind, I want to be forced to think. And yeah, this nails that. Um, an exceptional game. And like one I came very close to not getting to this year. Really, really glad that I made the time for it to see it here at number 3. I think it's definitely the best indie game that came out this year by a lot.
Nice. People at the Game Awards thought so too.
Mm.
I'm in good company. Yeah. All right.
Is it me
Matt,
again?
number 2.
Okay. My number
Last 2,
2
baby.
game of 2023 is Lies of P. This is a
Okay.
Honestly, I'm
game.
so annoyed I didn't get to play this game. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
this is one of the like ones I missed, and I was so excited when you told me how good it was that I'm just so mad.
I was so like when the game was first announced, I remember thinking like, what a stupid concept. And no company has ever been able to actually make a good Souls like. They've never been able to. And when I say that, I mean like they've never been able to clone what they do and make it as good as FromSoft does it. And I think Lies of P does that very, very competently. It has everything. It has like interesting builds, it has interesting weapon options. You can basically create a weapon from you have the blade half at the top, and then the handle at the bottom, and the blade handles your damage, and like the stat effects it has, or the element and stuff like that. The handle handles the move set, and your scaling and stuff like that. So I spent most of the game like I want to make the longest weapon I possibly can, and I had like a super long great sword that you usually carried on your back, but I had it attached to a handle that was just long and you held down by your side. So I had this like double the length of me. It clipped through the floor half the time, but it got the reach I wanted. It had all the moves I wanted. It was able, help me play the game in a way I enjoy playing. But the variety of things you could do, it was very, very impressive. The atmosphere was incredible. The visuals were incredible. The story was followable, the side quests were followable, the quality of life stuff versus other Souls-like games, or even just Souls games full stop, where it's like, oh, you have this item and this item can be used here. So on the fast travel section of the map, there's a dot next to here or a picture of the item next to this location because you want to use that here, which was just like great. It allowed me to play all the way through and get everything I needed to do and get the sort of true ending. It had a tough but fair like difficulty. There was summoning still, so if I wanted to, if I was really struggling with a boss, I could pull someone in. It would be a CPU. Um, it was just such a strong entry that it was almost indistinguishable in quality from other From Software games. There was still some mystery to it. There was still some like, or what does this do? I have to look this thing up, to sort of get there. But it was much more approachable in terms of like um understanding what the core mechanics were of the game. I think you are right, Steve. You did miss out on this game, and I'm so glad that we have confirmed DLC and a confirmed sequel. And based on what the game gives you at the end, I'm very excited for what that sequel is going to be. No spoilers from me at all, but I think that they're onto a winner here if they can keep this formula going in the way it seems like they're going to be doing it, and the sort of the world that they're creating. Um,
What's the next one
I'm
gonna be? We've got Lies of P. We're gonna have like Secrets of P, and then like
Well, I can't spoil it for you. I
Truths
can't.
of P.
Is it even going to be? Is it even going to feature P? Is the big question.
Who knows? Maybe it's
But
Q.
but yeah, speaking of that, I also think like the
Oh,
the
it's G
way.
for Geppetto, dude, or
Oh
Jiminy.
yeah,
Liza
Liza
J.
Divinity.
I remember I was trying to think of his name the whole time. The last time we spoke about this, I called him Giuseppe, and I thought it was gonna be
Giuseppe.
Giuseppe again.
Speaking of like the story of it, I think that the way they've adapted the story of Pinocchio makes it familiar to enough to people that have only really know from the Disney story or the other sort of tellings of it. But also, I think that it does a good job of going deeper into sort of the lore and also just going into like Italian folklore in itself, or just like Italian stories. There's characters in it that are Italian. They're not related to Pinocchio, but, a lot, but it is sort of Italian fantasy or you know, myths or folk tales or whatever. It's just very, very well done, and the way that it sort of makes this gritty. It doesn't do it in a way that feels forced, where it's like, oh, it's just trying to be so it's trying to take ideas and make them too adult. It does it in a way that is believable and is very um it just fits the world that they've created, and the lying aspect of it, how that fits in with you being a real boy, and how they introduce other fantasy characters to sort of introduce that concept to, it's just very clever. And yeah, the bosses are tough. There's a great variety of the bosses. There's twists in it, and when people were saying it was like just like a Bloodborne clone, it is very heavily inspired by Bloodborne, but I also think there's elements of Sekiro in there. There's elements of Nier Automata in there with the sort of the world and the puppets and things like that. I think it's a very yeah, it really impressed me, and I really enjoyed it. And I look forward to whatever content they bring out for it next, because I was thoroughly impressed by this, and um, I'm glad that I didn't listen to myself, because when I played the demo, I was like, "This is fantastic. This is really great." But where is it going to hold up? And I'm glad that I then pushed through and played it. Because yeah, it's really, really great game. And it's a shame that
Nice.
neither of you have played it. Um,
It's on my list. It was like I just didn't have that time to play it. I really, really want to play this, and I really want to play Alan Wake 2 as well.
yes,
Um, but then I know that the Elden Ring DLC is probably coming out this year, and it's like, do I just play that? I don't really have scope to play two Souls games in a single year. I don't know. It's a tough one. Like there's just too many games in 2023.
Yeah, this is one I would like to try because there's no way for me to talk about From Software games without being inflammatory, unfortunately. One of the things that I find most alienating about their games is that their stories are bad. And people try to tell you that they're good because they hide Easter eggs in them or whatever, but they're bad. And this game seems to actually have a narrative, and I'd
it
be
does.
interested in that.
But there is
I've
also
heard it's
elements
very
of
good
like
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a very good story, and I think that you can follow it along, and you can make sort of certain decisions in it, and affect sort of how characters come out of it.
I
But
like that.
also, yeah, but also like there is still you can dive in deeper by reading the item descriptions and stuff that
That's good.
help you sort of flesh it out. And there is, there's songs that are custom made for it, and there's characters whose side quests sort of flesh things out, and yeah, just really really good.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Awesome.
Steve.
Cool to see
My
somebody besides
oh
From Software get a big release like that that
yeah.
connected so deeply,
Oh, yeah,
right? Like,
finally.
yeah. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
That's right. My number two is not Chance of Sinnoh, which I've already spoken about. It's Starfield. Um,
Really?
I Yeah, yeah. I told you it's about what I enjoyed, Max, not what is objectively a good game or a bad game. I I had such a good time with Starfield, couldn't stop playing it. Me and Pete would talk about it for weeks. We'd come in and we'd talk about it and we'd be like, still having a really good time with Starfield. Have you done this side quest? Have you done that? And what about this like faction mission? Like this storyline's really cool. Oh, but this faction storyline's also really cool. And each individual one felt like they could have been a campaign themselves alongside the fact that the main story is actually pretty compelling anyway, and the kind of new game plus angle is really cool, that it changes every single time you kind of replay up to 10 times, as we found out from Max's friend, that you can just like play it 10 times, and every single time there's something new you'll get, there's something fresh you'll get. And I just had a really good time with it. Yes, it's nowhere near as good as Bethesda's other games. It's not even as good as Fallout 4, I don't think. But I think it was a really ambitious game. I think maybe it was a bit too ambitious. I think some of the systems could have been better, but I don't care about any of that because I had a good time going around shooting enemies and discovering the world and the stories and things like that. And it was the game that I kind of wanted Cyberpunk to be, especially on Neon. Especially, it really felt like cyberpunky, and you're in that town, and like those storylines and those quests and those side missions where you kind of join up and you become like a spy for a big organization was just so much fun. They're really really cool. And I think Starfield gets a bit of a bad rap. It's fun and cool to dunk on Starfield, and I don't think it deserves it. I think it is a good game. Yes, it might not be one of the best games that 2023 had to offer, and if you missed it because you have a PlayStation and you don't have any way of playing it, or you were just wrapped up playing Baldur's Gate 3 or one of the other hundreds of other games that came out last year, then that's fine. But I do think it's worth checking out, especially if you like Bethesda's other games, because it feels like a Bethesda game. I think people were expecting something a little bit more than that. But to me, I wanted a Bethesda game. I haven't had one that I enjoyed since Fallout 4, and I got one. And I'm looking forward to the rumored Oblivion remake this year, and I'm looking forward to what comes next from Bethesda Game Studios because I do always enjoy their games.
Very interested to see if where that one was gonna land for you. That's awesome. Uh, I agree with everything you said. The only thing I'll push back on is I do think it's better than Fallout 4. I don't know. I don't know. I like it. I think it does get a bad rap, and I think it ranks higher than several of their games that I've played for me. Um, if you remove nostalgia.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Oblivion for me is like the nostalgia. You know, it was like one of the first games I really got into on the 360. So
Totally.
for me, that's my favorite Bethesda game. And it's hard for me to remove nostalgia from that. But you know, if you do, you're probably right. It probably is a bad game, and it should be. You know, it's like 15 years newer. That's maybe even more than that. 18 years newer than that game. It just feels like this didn't quite reach where Skyrim reached, and
Yeah,
I
and
think it was probably an impossible bar for them to hit, really, with a new
maybe
IP.
right. It's tough, right? Because it's like there's so much that you could talk about there where it's like, is this team not capable of innovating in that same way anymore? Because, again, right? It's like people that have been making games for decades, and it's like maybe it's time for newer people to come in and set a new standard and blah blah blah. I don't know. There's like a lot of things you could talk about there, but like
I think it's also the fact that this has probably been in development for like
10
12
years.
years.
It was 10
Yeah.
years, right? It was, and that's the thing is you make a game in a silo, it's gonna feel old after a certain amount of time. There's a
Mhm.
lot there. But like it didn't live up to what Fallout 3 or New Vegas or Skyrim were at the time, but I do think it was one of the best games this year, and I think the marketing ended up being a disservice to it. I think if we had talked about it less leading up to it, that it might have been less of a victim of the level of scrutiny that it
Yeah.
experienced,
I
because I think
I
there
that
was a
video where
real
they showed, like, coming from the earth to the
yeah.
sky and then going off, it was misleading. People thought it was something that it wasn't.
And I think it led to people having a bit of an axe to grind with it. And that happens, right? Like, but and that's not it's like that's their own fault, right? They overhyped the game, so that's fine. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm with you. Special game, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it deserves the mostly negative reviews that it's got on Steam, that people have just been, like, review bombing it. You know, you can see some of the people who've only played it for, like, 10 hours, and they're
I
just
think
like,
it's
"Nah,
cool to
it's
hate
just
it,
this is."
is the thing.
And I do too. I do too.
And I've seen a lot of that type of person who's like, I only played this game for 2 hours or 5 hours or whatever, and it's dog shit, and it's the worst game ever, and it's the worst, and it's like you don't
The
have to
beginning's
like
a
it.
real slow burn on that game. It takes, like, 20 hours to really kind of be like, "Okay, now the kind of
Yeah,
braces are let off, and I can just go my own way, and I can
and
do what
like
I wanna do."
not liking that is a valid criticism,
Mhm.
and also it doesn't make it the worst game you've ever played. It just doesn't. Um, but when you promise the second coming and you deliver what is a you know average to good game, yeah, like people are going to have that reaction to it. I think if it hadn't been overhyped like that, maybe people would have been a little bit friendlier to it upon review. And I also don't think that the way that people played it benefits the way that it's meant to be played. It is a game I think you're supposed to take your time with and not try to like do everything in one run, right? Like you're supposed to play through it 10 times or whatever.
You're meant to play it multiple times. You're meant to do,
And
like, one side quest on the one side faction on the
right.
first run, second run you do the outlaws, third run you'll do, maybe you'll do something else, or you won't do any of them, and you'll mop up all the side quests.
And it is what it is, right? Like maybe people don't want like not everyone's gonna want to play that way. I'm not gonna sit here and say that somebody not liking the game because they didn't play it the quote unquote right
Mm.
way is like that's not their problem. That is the game's problem, and that is a valid criticism. And I guess that's why the game's not a 10 out of 10. But I'm with you where I definitely trended higher on it, and I was surprised by how negative some of the reaction was. But That's neither here nor there. Number 2 for you. Love that. Alrighty. Number 2 for me, Spider-Man 2.
Oh, thank God, I was worried it would be number 1 and I'd have to argue with you,
No,
but
no, 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 not a chance. Um,
Okay, so we know what your number 1 is then.
yeah, of course we do. I really love this game. I am obviously a big Spider-Man fan, right? And I think that that gives me a predisposition towards enjoying a good Spider-Man game, right? So I recognize that that's, a bias that I have that is probably leading me to trend a little higher on it than the average person. But I think that this game was similarly a victim of a lot of circumstance, right? Like I think people had decided going into this game from before we even saw it that, oh, it's just going to be more Spider-Man and that's going to be a good thing, but it won't be a mind-blowing thing. And I think that that narrative was cemented early, and I think that that is the narrative that was pushed forward, right? And I think that it ignores a lot of the innovation that did happen in the game, and it's not 100% positive, right? Like there's definitely issues with the game. I think that there are things that um there's still room for improvement, right, for the next go around, or even with Wolverine or what have you. But as somebody who really loves the moment to moment gameplay of these games, right? I think the traversal is it's the most fun to move in any video game, save for maybe 3D Mario stuff, right? By my estimation. And I think that there were some changes to the combat system that were very good. I think there were some that were not as good. I didn't love the changes to the gadget system totally. I think some of the gadgets ended up making the combat more melee focused and moved away from some of the like trapping and kind of more creative stuff that you could do in one. Um, but I also think that like this story is trying to kind of juggle a lot of elements and wanting to streamline the power set because there are two different playable Spider-Men is something that like I understand, and I think that the trade-off of having a game where Peter and Miles can be co-leads is worth that trade. And I think that that's something that was executed on very well. I think again, right? Like this game has the fact that it's an established IP and it's using characters that people already know and storylines that people have experienced, and that gets played against it, right? But like I think that taking the pieces that they set up in the first game and the ways in which they have decidedly made their Spider-Man or their Marvel universe, whatever, different was executed really well, right? And like playing the Venom story with a different character in the Venom suit, having Miles be a major player in kind of the journey that Peter goes through with the symbiote and everything. Like those are all things that I think really freshen up that story and make it hit different, even for somebody that has experienced it different ways, time and again, right? And I think those things are all really great. Like as somebody who really loves Spider-Man, it's clear the love that this team has for Spider-Man and how much reverence they have for their own universe and wanting it to stand out and be, not just a video game rehashing of Spider-Man's greatest hits, but like their own universe and being able to um have its own legacy and stand aside those other big Spider-Man stories like Spider-Verse or, the stuff in the MCU or not quite on this level, but some of the great Spider-Man stories from the comics, right? Um and I think that like when it comes to games, like they've earned that, right? Like I think the trilogy now of games that they've created here are so great and on a technical level, right? Like this game just ups the ante across the board, with very few missteps, by my estimation, right? This is a game I platinumed. I enjoyed every second of that platinum. There wasn't 1 minute where I felt bogged down or like I didn't want to do what I was doing moment to moment. And I know that that is different for every person. Some people feel like some of the side stuff gets repetitive, whatever, whatever. But I love the way that their New York feels like a living, breathing organism, and that I'm swinging a by to go to a mission and there's a break in. And like, I stop for every one of those things because I just like it. I like the loop of that game so much. And it's so satisfying as somebody who, has been playing Spider-Man games as long as I've been playing video games, right? Like when you get it right, it hits for me. And Insomniac like has I think mastered that formula and are clearly the studio that makes the best Spider-Man games. And the fact that we got one that was as good as it was a miracle. The fact that we've gotten two that I think are better now, hey, you know, can't wait for three, baby.
Well, you got Wolverine first, by the looks of it,
Yeah.
Can't
and
wait for
some
that
other
either,
games
man.
along the way.
It's great because it's honestly like, and there's like a whole, I don't need to sling shit, but like the comment you made earlier, Max, about the Jedi stuff to Star Wars, as the like MCU is, I think, well, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of years, but it feels as if it's waning, right? Like I am excited that you have stuff like Insomniac or the Blade game coming up or whatever, where like I'm getting to see some of my favorite studios like take characters that I have history and affection for and like really give them respect and treat them properly and put out something that hits that bar that, up until Insomniac's Spider-Man 2018, it was like Arkham was like the one that had done
Yeah.
it, right? And then nobody else was able to replicate that success despite there being lots of imitators. So, yeah, man. I mean, you know, I, I am the fucking target audience for this game and yeah, it fires on all cylinders for me. Love it.
I expected it to. I expected it to be this high.
Yeah, I mean, I you know what I'm about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was for me, there was absolutely no. uh, if I've got the list here of like from 1 through to 17 of all 17 games that I played, this is at sort of 13, edging on 14, depending on something else. Just because there was just so many other things that I think were just that game didn't do right for
Interesting.
me, or that game has missed the mark on, or that like not to want to speak too much about the Insomniac leak, the fact that there were games mentioned in that, but at no point was DLC mentioned in that any of that for Spider-Man, and most of Spider-Man's stories end in teases for what seems to be DLC. It makes me worried that we're now not going to see the stuff that frustrated me because I was like, oh, now I've got to wait for the DLC to see where the end of this goes, or this character that they've spent like an entire
Max, I'll tell you this.
quest line
I'll
through.
tell you this.
Hmm?
I got it worked out. I got my pin board. I figured out where it's all going.
All right, okay.
We'll talk. We'll
But
talk.
why was none of that in the game? That's what I want to know. Well,
Because this is the
I know
middle
you
of the
said about
trilogy.
no, I know you talk about serialized storytelling, but surely like the problem I have with a lot of the MCU stuff is that they do like a little tease and they go like, ho, 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 and like there's still things post credit scenes from like 4 years ago, 3 years ago that we haven't really had full endings to. It's like,
I
oh,
mean,
they've
that's a
teased
whole
something.
bigger that's the thing though, right? It's like, it's only been 3 years, my guy. It's like, you
Yeah,
gotta
yeah,
you gotta
yeah.
let stuff build.
Yeah, but then they've had 7 projects since then that don't mention this stuff. They've had 8 projects featuring the
That's because
characters that are in this thing, right?
they put too much fucking shit out now.
Yeah, exactly,
That's
right,
the real
exactly.
answer.
But what Spider-Man has done is, especially this one, is it's done a lot of like all of the side quests where it's like you do 5 things and the ending of that is they go, this whole side quest was actually this character, and you go, oh, cool. But like, where's the rest of that character? And I was like, cool, maybe it'll be a DLC, but it seems like it's not going to be a DLC. I've now got to wait 5 years for the conclusions to this stuff,
Maybe it's
and
an online
Venom's
game,
coming out
Max. We'll
next year,
find
buddy.
out.
You got
Yeah,
it. Venom
we'll
will be
see.
out next year.
Yeah, well, we'll see, we'll see.
it's
There's no
this year,
context, though,
isn't
is
it?
there?
Isn't it this year?
Oh, no, yeah,
Ye
you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it is
guess
this
it is
year.
this
Yeah,
Yeah.
year,
yeah.
technically.
Well, so saith whatever they got from there. That could we don't know when that's from technically, do we? I guess. We have no
Fingers crossed.
context for that, but yeah.
I think that one's real.
Um,
I'd take that one to the bank, personally.
Max, what's your number one? I can guess, but
You
what's
can
your number
guess.
one?
Why don't you say it before you know it? My number one is Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah,
Let's
and so is yours,
go!
right?
A
Pete?
man of
Yeah,
culture. Yes, my
there
number
we
one is
go.
also Tears of the Kingdom, so let's just talk about it now.
Cool. So
Okay.
where Tears of the Kingdom, my biggest want for this game, I'm gonna start on a negative. My biggest want for this game was the dungeons. And they spoke, just before launch, they said, "We've got these themed dungeons." And I was like, "Cool, here we go." And for me, the dungeons were the biggest letdown of the game because not a single one of them was very interesting. However, the rest of the game around that and the game, um, the rest of the game around that was so compelling, and the moving around and getting from place to place and the underground and the overground and the before you even get to the sky stuff and the way that they changed Hyrule and managed to recontextualize the world that you already knew and change things and add things in and the increased verticality, the ability to go anywhere, all of these things really just came together to make a game that took what Breath of the Wild did, which was be a game with a working physics function, give you some toys to play around with those physics, and then give you puzzles to do that in the world, in the shrines or whatever. They took that and then they took that to like a whole other level where they were like, "Oh yeah, these 4 things you have that you can interact with the physics in some ways is now just like one thing, and there's now 3 other things, and then all each of these objects also lets you do it, and then each of these objects interacts with these objects in certain ways. Now you can have them on your weapon, you can have them on your shield, and you can you know make a weapon, you can make an object. Just the level of creativity that you could have as a player and how simple that was to do it. It's one thing to have all of these complex things interacting because the game does it. Like you press a button and the game does 6 different things, and each one of those things interacts, and then it comes out with a result, right? For a game to do that is impressive. For you, the player, to be able to have a direct interaction with that and do that yourself and experiment with that and put things together and test things out and play around and see how things come out. And then for that to, in the most part, work exactly as intended is so impressive. And I think Nintendo have done such an impressive and they just nailed it. All of the puzzles, there were so many puzzles that I was just like, this is so clever. Um, Not me solving it, not the solution, but the puzzle itself is so clever, um, and so natural, and it just makes perfect sense to me. There's one I could think of where there's like um, you have a block, and there's a button you have to hit, or a ball, there's a button you have to hit, and the button's over water. So naturally, you pull the ball down under the water, and the buoyancy pushes it back up. It hits the button, great. And then you have one where you have like a foam board that floats. And it's like, well, there's no way you can pull that down that it will do it in a certain way. But I know from as a kid that if you pull a float down this way, the pressure of it on the sides just forces it up out of the air. So I did. I rotated it 90 degrees, pushed it down, and bang, it did it. And I was like, that's exactly how I expected it to work, and it worked that way. And there are probably other ways I could have solved that puzzle, but that is the way I chose to do it. Which again is another thing that I liked about Breath of the Wild, and I think Tears of the Kingdom does so much better, which is
So that yeah, Tears
the
of the Kingdom definitely
freedom.
allows you gives you the freedom to solve the puzzles however you want. Because
Exactly.
I solved a lot of them just by making giant bridges
Yeah.
out
Yep.
of lots of updates.
Or just flinging myself in the air
Flinging
high enough
stuff,
that I
Yeah.
could
yeah.
glide. The first time I managed to sort of avoid this in all of the sort of pre-release stuff. The first time I went to a tower and expected to have to climb it, only to be then forced into the air, in this fantastic cutscene, get this huge sort of spread of the city or the
Mm.
the the world, and just being like, "Oh my god, like, this is," it gives you goosebumps. The first time I jumped off of, and you're flying down and the title pops up, I got goosebumps where
Yeah, that
you
was
just
great.
see
Yeah.
this incredible world, and sure, the performance wasn't perfect. As soon as you try to interact with anything, it drops 20 FPS, but, the limitations of the Switch,
Are what they are.
considering what it's doing, are fine.
It runs
Um,
incredibly considering how much it's doing, right? Like,
yeah,
the
and
fact
how
that you
big
can
it is.
seamlessly go from the sky to the land to the
Yeah,
underground and build an airship that's 100 parts, and it can
yeah,
remember that, and, like, it's yeah, man,
yeah,
like, the amount of heavy lifting, like, this game is, like, fucking 20 gigs or whatever, it's nuts, it's
yeah,
nuts.
yeah.
It's an
It's just
extreme, technical achievement that it
yes.
runs as well as it does, I think.
This, similar to Odyssey, is Nintendo working at, like, its full capacity. It's
Yeah.
like
Height of its
it's
power.
yeah, it's like we had this idea, we wanted to do this thing, and we've now done it to such a high degree that I don't think anyone else is capable of doing it. Odyssey does it with the platforming. Tears of the Kingdom does it with maybe not necessarily like open world. There are probably open worlds that are better. There are probably ways you can interact with open worlds. There are probably open worlds that have deeper stories, better content, blah blah blah. But the way that you can
I think there
interact with
probably
this world,
are open worlds that are more populated, but
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's part of the I think it's part of the charm of Tears of the Kingdom,
I
especially
don't want
considering that
that.
3 layers, right? And it's a
Yeah.
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic land,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Like
all of this stuff's gone on.
the the fact that parts of the game are not dense makes it feel more special, right? Like it feels like a
Mhm.
wild, untamed
Yeah, it's
world, and like,
untouched. You
yeah,
are
like
exploring this and
if you were
yeah.
in the middle of the woods, you wouldn't see another person either, right?
Exactly.
Like, or
I
maybe
don't
one, right? But like that's fine, you know. And those like aha moments, like the opportunity for discovery, and like this being a sequel, like it makes such good use of iterating on the map. Of
Mhm.
like anytime there was a thing there originally, you go back and there's a different thing there now, or the thing that was there has changed, right?
Mhm.
And like that is so rewarding, right? Because this easily could have been a sophomore slump situation where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, it's more of the same. It's not more of the same. They took the wheel and reinvented it again, and it's like nuts. Like it's nuts how much uh better it is than a game that I thought was perfect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and honestly, it makes me realize that Breath of the Wild maybe that there was I thought there's no way they can make this any better, and then they did it. And it not makes me think Breath of the Wild is worse, but makes me think that there's got to be a score above 10 now because Tears of the Kingdom
it just
feels that much better than Breath of the Wild.
I think it speaks to what is so special about video games, right? That it is just it is a medium that's constantly evolving because the technology is constantly evolving. Like in a medium where you're only limited by your imagination and technology, right? Like That that's like this game exists because they were able to make Breath of the Wild and then build on top of it, right? And it's like that's awesome. And it's like the fact that they don't really do that with Zelda, that it is a franchise that kind of you get one shot at an aesthetic and then you build, you move on and you go away and you make another one. Like I hope that they look at this and think, hey, maybe we should be doing more sequels, right? Because like look at everything we were able to do by making something that was a sequel. Yeah, man, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think this is potentially my favorite game of all time now. Like,
Damn.
I definitely had goosebumps throughout my playthrough. Like, it took weeks for the euphoria of I'm jumping in. I have something in my mind that I'm working on. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go to the closest tower. I'm gonna jump up in the sky, and whatever catches my attention, I'm gonna just go chase it.
Yeah.
And like that man, that loop is just it's something else. And the switch and the fact that it's a game that works really well docked, it works really well on handheld. It was so just a dominant moment in my life where like all I could do was play this fucking game or
Yeah.
think about playing this game.
Yeah.
And having the okay, when I'm at home and I'm playing on the dock, I'm gonna be working on the memories. And when I'm not, I'm gonna be cleaning out shrines. And it's like I I don't know, man. It's just like I could probably play that game for another 200 hours and still not have scratched everything that there
Yeah.
is to do, right? But like I, the
It's
fact that like
very impressive.
the fact that it's built in that way, like, is so special too because I don't really want to do everything. It's like because like life isn't like that. You can't do everything. You're supposed to experience what you experience and then move on. And it's
See, that's what I really like about Baldur's Gate 3 is that
yeah,
game's, like, designed so you don't see things, right?
Yeah.
huh?
You're not meant to know everything that's there, and you can't possibly know
Because of
everything
like
that's
who
there, and
you
I
are,
really like
right?
that.
Because of the
Yeah,
decisions you made at the character creator, you're
yeah.
not going to see everything, and it's like that's awesome,
It's like
staggering.
in Breath of the Wild where there's 900 Korok seeds, and there's not 900 Korok seeds because the game expects you to find 900 Korok seeds. There's 900 Korok seeds because the average player amongst their playthrough will find enough of them just through playing naturally that they will find enough to fully upgrade their slots, right? And it's similar with content in this game, and same with Baldur's Gate, right? In a game as vast as this, in a game where um, there are so many options you can do and so many choices that a player can make, for one player to naturally see all of it, you have to really signpost a gate, and then you stop making the game that you're making because instead of making a game where you have all this choice and this freedom, this option, you have a game where you're actually just pointing the player at certain things. You've made a Ubisoft game, right? If you want a player to see every single thing in this entire map, you've made a game that has to point you to this thing. It's similar to like Spider-Man, I guess, where you're expected to be able to finish everything in that game because it points you to everything in the game, right? You press a button and it shows you around you. Here's all the
There's
things that are
boxes
around
to
you.
check.
Yeah,
It's what made Elden Ring special for
yeah,
me in 2022.
yeah,
It was like,
yeah.
there's
Very
no
similar.
boxes to check here. I can just go out and I can
Yeah.
explore. And Tears of the Kingdom definitely does that. You can
Mhm.
go and you can look what's over there. Or like Pete said, in your mind from oh, I've played this game before. I've been on this map before. I know if I go to this area, there's a little town. But that town might not be there anymore. It might now be overrun with pirates, or it might be something completely different. I think that is really special, and it's something you can only do with a sequel. This is only the second Zelda sequel, right? Majora's Mask is the other direct
Yeah, I
sequel.
think you're right. Yeah, depends if you believe in well, unless Zelda 2 actually counts, or
No, it
Phantom
does not.
Hourglass um
Wind Waker. Wind Waker into
into
that.
not even no. Well, Wind Waker into Phantom Hourglass, but also Phantom Hourglass into Spirit Tracks is
Oh,
also
right,
technically
true.
a sequel in some ways. So
Yeah.
there are a couple, but like this is the only one that like is a direct. This is the same game, but
Yeah,
you know,
use the same
Majora's
map.
Mask is like Majora's Mask
Right,
is
because
like
like Ocarina and Majora's are like direct sequels, like timeline wise, but they're not the same kind of game. I mean, there's
yes,
dungeons or
exactly.
whatever, but like
Yeah,
other than that, they're totally different. But I mean, I
yeah,
guess technically you could argue that with this one, right? Because it's like it is a direct sequel, but like the fundamental way that you interact with the game is wholly different, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
the building and everything, it's like it fundamentally changes the way that you solve problems and the way that you approach situations and like I think that's also really cool because I think that's a thing that makes the, like, Breath of the Wild sequel of it all better because it's, like, cool, like, it's not just more, and I think it also means that, like, people can still play Breath of the Wild and get a different experience, and because it's, like, again, it's just they have some things that are extreme like, obviously, there's some things that are one-to-one exactly the same, but, like, so much more is just not, and it's they took a really big swing on this game, and it paid off for
It
sure.
perfectly connected.
I think if Baldur's Gate 3 didn't come out this year too, that it would have cleaned up for game of the year and everything. Like
Absolutely.
I don't think it would have even been a fucking conversation, actually.
Yeah, yeah, I think those are it was one or the other, and Baldur's Gate was gonna sort of take
Like one of the
a
best
more
games of all
notable.
time had to come out for it to not be
Yeah, yeah,
utterly dominant. So, um, yeah, I exceptional game, exceptional video game.
really is.
I had a lot of moments while I was playing it where I was like, I can't believe that I'm playing this and that it's as good as it is.
Yes, I really didn't think they'd be able to do it, and then they did.
It got lightning
Now
in a bottle twice. Look at that.
now as much as I enjoy talking about Zelda, I am fascinated and racking my brains about what the hell Steve's
I know what it
playing
is. I know what
this.
it is. And if
I
I'm
it
right, I'm gonna scream.
I don't think Deceive Inc. came out this year, so I don't have a clue what it could
Don't
possibly
you? It
be.
did. It came out in
Did it?
March, and it's my favorite game of 2023.
Wow,
Oh, okay.
okay.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. Never mind. I
What
should
did
have
you think
guessed
it
it.
was gonna be?
I really
No,
thought he was gonna say the fucking Hitman World of
No,
Assassins.
no,
no,
that
no,
wouldn't
he
make my
mentioned it
list.
earlier, he
No.
mentioned it
Okay,
earlier.
okay, all right, I missed that, I'm sorry. I was gonna be like, I swear to God if you hit me with that."
No,
That
Go on,
makes
no.
sense
Steve.
because about I would say probably 95% of the times that I was on a computer this year, Steve is playing Deceiving.
Yeah, it would come up a
Yeah.
lot.
I've played 270 hours of Deceiving, and most of that is from, like, October to December. I've played a lot of this game. I love this game. It's phenomenal. It's very rare I get into a multiplayer game like this in any way. And I think this is just a really special, cool game. You play an NPC. You got to pretend to be an NPC. You got to fit in. You got to hide. It feels a lot like Hitman in that regard. That you just got to kind of fit in, but you've got to steal intel and
Is it like
hack
prop hunt
into.
people, is it?
You what? Sorry.
Is it
Yeah,
like
yeah. It
prop
is
I
like
I
prop
I
hunt
I
with.
own this game, I
Yeah.
have no idea what it's about,
Oh,
so
you should absolutely play it with us, Max. Like, I'd love to show you the ropes on this game. It
I also would like to learn how to play. We should do a stream.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. But yeah, you essentially, in order to get into certain rooms, you need specific cover. So you have to become a guard or you have to become a staff member. But then those people react in specific ways, right? Like if a guard sees another spy, they need to shoot at that spy. They need to be chasing and following that spy. So if you're not doing that, you really stand out like a sore thumb. Whereas if you're just a civilian, you're going to run away from it. You're going to try and escape the danger. So you've got to try and play the NPC while also trying to get the intel before the other people do to then hack into the vault to steal whatever it is on that level and then escape in a flying car. And meanwhile, everyone else is trying to attack you. You can play solos, duos, trios. It's just such a fun game. Every single agent plays in a very different way. They've got very different weapons, and they've put out their plan for 2024 that they're looking to like allow you to upgrade weapons. They're looking to add a new map, add a new agent, and I'm just so excited for it because I've had such a good time with it playing with friends, and I highly recommend people check it out. You can always get this game super cheap. It's like it was like 199 on
Yeah,
CD
I
keys.
got
I
it for
bought
like
this game for.
180. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they sent me a code for this in March on the PlayStation 5, and I did not get a chance to check it out because I didn't have PlayStation Plus. It was like a whole thing. But I'm so glad I ended up picking it up on Steam Deck, and I've had such a good time there. Plays phenomenally, and I am obsessed with gyro aim now. Like I'm so glad I got into it. It's yeah, just a phenomenal game, and it's made by a small studio, and I hope more and more people will check it out.
That's really cool. It's really. I did not expect it to be because I didn't think it'd come out this year. But yeah, really impressive. Or last year, sorry, really impressive. That's
Uh,
it. We're done, right? Oh no, sorry,
yeah.
Pete. Sorry, go.
No, 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 no. I'm with you.
Peace,
I
peace
was
was
Tears
Tears
of
of
the
the
Kingdom
Kingdom.
as well. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
good.
I didn't know if you had more that you wanted
No, no,
to touch on with it.
yeah,
But
I mean, I think I said all I need to say. I think it's the best game this year. I think it might be my favorite game of all time. What more can you say about it, right?
game
Yeah,
good.
I was gonna just say I think it's awesome to see Deceive Inc. At the top of your list, man. Very cool. And definitely I know a game that you really loved. And I hope we get a chance to play it together next year and maybe get some people in the
Mm.
community involved and stuff. Cause you're the only one I hear talking about it. So we should try to get more people
Yeah,
on this train.
we should. Yeah,
You got a plan?
join. It'll be fun. It'll be great. I'll teach you both.
We'll figure it out. We'll
But
figure it out.
now we've got to figure out where we rank. We know the 1 to 4, but then we're struggling because we've got some ties, so we're
We
gonna
got
have
some
to debate.
tiebreakers. Okay, let's do it.
We're gonna have to debate. So
So let's
Liza
go through
P.
it. We'll go through it in from let's go from one and we'll break the
Oh,
ties as we go.
yeah. Okay. So number 1 is Tears of the Kingdom. Got a score of 23 from us. Number 2, Super Mario Brothers Wonder with a score of 18. Number 3 is
Only two games
Starfield
on the
with a
list that we
score.
all voted for, right?
Yeah, yeah. Number 3 is Starfield with a score of 12. Number 4 is Deceive Inc. with a score of 10. And now we hit a tie for 5 or 6, which is Liza P and Spider-Man 2. I think Liza P should be 5 because I'm also interested in Liza P. And I will let you two.
I'd be inclined to agree. I'd be inclined to agree
Boo.
with that.
Bullshit. You're interested in it? I don't care. You didn't play it. Like I
Okay, then
thought about
you
playing
two
it.
argue between you two because you said you wanted to play Liza P as well.
Yeah.
And Max did not enjoy Spider-Man by the sound of
That's
it.
not
I
true.
enjoyed it
It was
enough.
his 13th favorite game this year.
Out
Okay.
of 17. I would like to put Liza P up there because of how highly I rated it. But I mean, hey, I'm
I'm
only
outvoted.
one
It's
man.
fine. Put it at 5.
Okay, then we've got another tie for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed
I'm
and
winning
Sea of
this one.
Stars.
Put Sea of
And I
Stars up.
think Sea of Stars should win
Yeah,
this
put Sea
one.
of Stars
I'm
up.
winning this
So
one.
Sea of Stars should be 7, and then Xenoblade Chronicles is 8. Then we've got 9 and 10, Alan Wake 2 and American Arcadia. And I think Alan Wake 2 should get 9 and American Arcadia should be
That's
10. But I'm
very.
open to
That
people
is.
arguing in my favor.
No, I'm good with that.
No, I'm
I
good with
mean,
that.
I think that sounds right.
I'll take 2 wins. That's fine.
Cool.
Perfect.
It's a shame that Dredge didn't make it into the top 10, considering us again that we both played and enjoyed.
Oh yeah, rare game that multiple people played but
Yeah,
didn't
two
didn't make it
choices.
higher.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Maybe we need to rethink this system when there's so many games. Maybe we need to.
Hey, it's weighted. I think it's as fair as we
Yeah,
can do it.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
They can't all be top 10. It's just
No,
not
I agree.
possible. I'm sorry.
I
I
agree.
can't change numbers.
I agree with
Yeah.
you.
All right, so then we got what? Dredge, Jedi, Survivor, Pikmin 4, and Diablo 4 in a 4-way tie.
Oh, are we doing beyond 10? I thought we were just doing the top
Oh,
10.
you want to just do the top 10? We can do
That's
that.
what I thought was happening. We're also 2 hours and
Yeah,
40
well, I
minutes
think
into
we
this.
do the top 10,
So
and then I know, Max, you had some honorable mentions. I don't know if you've
We'll
got
call
any,
it there.
Pete. I've
That
got a
sounds good.
couple.
I've got 2 honorable mentions. One is God of War Ragnarok Valhalla. There's a fantastic free DLC mode, but however, it wasn't substantial enough to make it onto my list as a piece of DLC, but I thought it was exceptional. It was Hades, but God of War, it was well acted, it was well thought out, it was challenging, it was quite addictive. I was able to sort of blast through it on the deck. Um, not that long, but I was able to sort of like, grind through some of the bits myself. And my second honorable mention is the game that was my favorite game that was new to me this year. So it was not a game that came out this year. Was Tunic. I'm really glad I got around to
Nice.
playing Tunic. Really solid game. One of my favorite games I played this year. Unfortunately, didn't come out this year, so hasn't come up until now. So yes.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Steve, honorable mentions.
I already mentioned Pizza Tower and Connections, two great games, but didn't make it on the list. Hi-Fi Rush. I was surprised it didn't make it on the list. I thought it would have. I loved that game. Really solid rhythm game, great action game, gorgeous visual style. I just didn't like it enough for it to make it on the list into my top 10. Hitman Freelancer, I've already mentioned. Great roguelike mode on Hitman, solid gameplay. You got to kind of get through. I've still not managed to complete it. Don't think I ever will at this point.
That's it.
10 Dates came out this year. It's a follow-up to 5 Dates, one of my favorite games I played last year that came out during the pandemic. It's not as solid as 5 Dates, I think, because it's in person and not video calls, which the concept of the original game was we're in a pandemic and we're trying to make connections online. But there's queer dating in it, and I was very happy about that. I was very excited to see same gender people dating, which was nice. And then The Last of Us Part 1 remastered, which was a massive surprise for me because that game was a mess at launch. But I've had such a good time playing that. Just took down David, and it was very satisfying.
Didn't
I'm
that come
looking
out
forward to
last year?
finishing that. No, it came out beginning of 2023.
Did it? Oh, okay.
Part 1 remastered on PC. But,
Oh, on PC, of course. Right,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah. All right.
it's not on my list for a reason.
Yeah. Go on, Pete.
Okay, so I did already mention Baldur's Gate 3, right? That's one that, it's just time became a factor. If I had played that game the way I wanted to, I don't think I would have had 10 games on my list. So, um, you know, looking forward to reevaluating that one more thoroughly in 2024. Two games that I did finish that I enjoyed a lot, but just didn't make the cut, was Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition.
Oh,
This was
shit!
great game. I love Age of Empires. Big fan of the old school
Better
RTSs
than
like that.
Mythology. Totally agree.
Yeah, let's not get crazy here. Age of Mythology is the best one, but Age of Empires 2, solid number 2, and the Xbox port of it is excellent. It's really really the controller support's really good. It's on Game Pass, so you can play it for free. That's where I played it, and it was like a really good like palate cleanser for me, like similar to like what I expressed about Mortal Kombat 1, where like I was in between big releases. I think I was waiting for Final Fantasy or something like that to come out, and I wanted to play something a little bit different. I played through the campaign. I had a great time with it. Very nostalgic for me as somebody who enjoyed these games as a youth. Although I never finished this one because I was more of an Age of Mythology kid, so finally ran through it. So yeah, I guess that one fits my new to me criteria as well, even though it's also a
Mhm.
re-release of an old game. So you get a double whammy on that one. And then the game that was like just edged out for me was Fire Emblem Engage. Uh,
Yeah.
Game
Oh,
I
I
enjoyed a
forgot that
lot.
even came out.
Yeah,
Same.
right. A lot of people did. One I really enjoyed earlier this year. Talked a lot about it. It was very very good for the gameplay, like the actual skirmishes. Excellent. I think it being kind of a anniversary greatest hits game with a really flimsy story to bring all the characters together, it leaves it. I think that hampers it from being something that I was able to connect with on an emotional level like I did with Three Houses. So it just was like just mechanically a very satisfying game, whereas every other game on this list was very mechanically satisfying and had some kind of X factor when it came to aesthetic or or emotionality, right? So, just edged out, but a good one for sure. If you're in the mood for a tactical RPG, and you didn't play any of the other ones that came out this year, go give that one a go. Or I guess if you've played all the other ones that came out this year, then go give that one a go. Is I guess what I mean to say.
Yeah, I guess there's Advance Wars as well, that's right, that
And
came out
Wargroove
as well.
2, and
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
man.
A lot of
Yeah.
turn-based stuff this year. It was a real good year for RPG boys like me.
Mm-hmm.
JBs. RPG JBs. Babies.
RPGBs give me the heebie-jeebies.
There you go. There we go. We got there. Okay, everybody. Long one. Long episode. Great episode to kick off the year. Thank you for joining us here for another Game of the Year discussion. If you want to write in with your thoughts on any of the games that we discussed or your Game of the Year, guess what? You can do that in a bunch of ways. You can come join our Discord and keep the conversation rolling between episodes. You can write in to questions@flipscreen.games, or you can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you'll find links to all the places we are all over the web and much more. You're going to want to go and get subscribed and tuned in because we've got a lot of fun episodes coming up in the next couple weeks. Of course, we're going to be checking in our predictions next week and naming the latest recipient of the Mbessi Trophy. We'll see how that one goes. Yeah, Steve is pulling. I'm pulling for you, buddy. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. You're not gonna want to miss it. Make sure you head over to flipscreen.games and follow along. However you choose to get involved or show your support. We thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Flipscreen Games podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.